All right, welcome back to the Krueger Show, Friday, May the 26th. Hope everybody's having a great day. Beautiful weather out. Calendar getting ready to turn from May to June. OTAs have already begun, I should say. Training camp is around the corner, and we are talking Niner ball on this Friday. Jack Hammer's in the house. Our co-branded Krueger Show, first go-round. So the show is on this channel, but it's also being streamed currently at the exact same time on Jack's channel as well. Jack, of course, covering the Niners for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat, and does a bang-up job. Jack, good to see you, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Good to see you too, Larry.
You know, it's a fun time of year because, now we've got a pretty good idea of all, what the NFL teams are going to look like. I mean, there will be a few moves between now and training camp. Heck, DeAndre Hopkins got cut today by the Cardinals. And who knows? I think the 49ers potentially could be in the market for another edge rusher between now and training camp. Probably Nick Bosa gets his deal, his extension done, and so they'll have a little bit more cap room. But we're getting a good sense of what these teams look like right now. And one of the things that I saw this morning is Caesars Sportsbook has the 49ers listed as the favorites to win the NFC. 49ers are plus 320 to win the NFC. That makes them the odds-on favorite to win the conference. Eagles are plus 340. So let's say the Niners, slight favorites. Dallas is the only other team with lower than a 10-1 odds to win the conference. They're at plus 650. So, what do you think? 49ers at almost, a little bit worse than 3-1 to win the conference.
I think that's right. Earlier this week, ESPN had come out with their rankings. They have the 49ers second in the NFC with their Football Power Index ranking, right behind the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this one's accurate. I think you can put them number one or number two, either direction. It's hard to argue with. But I think that you look at the moves that have been made in this offseason, the players lost by Philadelphia, the players picked up by the 49ers, where the two teams were last year already. I think the 49ers are the best team in the NFC, and it's just a matter of getting the quarterback position right.
Yeah, which is a big question. There's no question about that. By the way, we are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville, inside the Emeryville Public Marketplace. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. I titled this Krueger and Jack Hammer extravaganza as what Kyle Shanahan likes about Trey Lance. And what did you think? First of all, how would you answer that question? What do you think Shanahan does indeed like about Lance? I just got off of a live stream with Matt Mayoko, and we kind of talked it through, and in Matt's eyes, Brock obviously is their clear-cut choice, especially if he's healthy. We discussed Trey Lance and Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen, and as whether or not Trey's going to be here or not. And Matt's belief was that Trey could be anything from the week 1 starter to they're going with Brandon Allen as QB3, and Trey's moved on to a different franchise. He thinks everything is on the table and all options are still available, which is a wild story and probably the biggest story in the NFL. Here we are in late May. That right there is probably the biggest subplot there is in the entire league.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with what Matt says there. I do think that everything is on the table for the 49ers at the quarterback spot. I would be a little surprised to see them trade Trey Lance. I think the reason I say that is because of all the issues they've had at the quarterback position, since Shanahan and Lynch got here, moving off of a quarterback and, that could help them win games if necessary, would be a little bit of a surprise. But if a team comes knocking and is willing to give them a second-round pick for Trey Lance, or maybe a couple of them, sometime, let's say, late in training camp or what have you, and Brock Purdy's healthy and all those types of things, there's a lot of qualifiers that would have to go into this. But I could see them making a trade with Trey Lance, but that's not for a while. And we're going to be watching Trey Lance, I think, throughout OTAs and throughout a lot of training camp, and we'll see where he is. We'll get a better idea of exactly who he is as we go through this.
I was listening. I was driving around yesterday morning. I was listening to our buddy Mike Silver, who popped on the radio on KBR with Murph and Mac, and he basically says, "Hey, look, if Brock Purdy's healthy and if he's the player that we've already seen, then he's the guy, and he's the future, and he's the guy they're going with." And in Silver's verbiage, he's like, 49er fans should probably just embrace it. But there's, as you know, it's a divided fan base. That's, even though Brock played exceptionally well and they're all Niner fans, there's an awful lot of people that are like, hey, you know what? I'm caught up on the narrative of Trey Lance as the third pick overall, the future face of the franchise, and 4 games is not enough to determine if Trey can play or cannot play. And those fans, despite their appreciation for what Brock Purdy has done, really are dead set on Trey being the Niners starting quarterback. I guess the question is this: Will 49er fans come together and embrace Brock Purdy as the future, as long as Trey Lance is sitting right there behind him in some capacity, either as the number 2 or number 3? Or do you think that there's people that are so wanting to see Trey that as long as he's a 49er, that they will not fully embrace Purdy as the franchise guy? Or is there something Brock can do this year, short of like winning the Super Bowl, that would actually make the fan base kind of unite behind him?
It's an interesting question, because I think there's a good group of the fan base that already believes in Brock Purdy, and then you have another area of the fan base that really believes in Trey Lance, and that group that believes in Trey Lance. There's nothing short of a Super Bowl victory that's going to get them over to Brock Purdy's side. Brock Purdy could do everything you can think of as a quarterback, but if he doesn't win the Super Bowl, the argument is, see, we told you that he wasn't good enough to do it. We told you that you needed to have a quarterback that could throw the ball this way, that could run this way, that can do all these things in order to win a Super Bowl. And see, that's why we're not doing it. So I think as long as Trey Lance is on this roster, anything short of lifting a Lombardi trophy at the end of the season, for the folks that are already more on the Trey Lance side, I don't think there's anything else that Brock Purdy could do to win those folks over. Now,
you're writing a piece right now on Trey Lance. Tell us a little bit about your angle, and if people are wanting to check it out, when is it going to be out?
Yeah, it'll be out this afternoon, and it's around Trey Lance, and it's going to be a quick look at where he is now compared to where we were a year ago with Trey Lance. Realistically, we're in the same spot. There's nothing that's different about Trey Lance with where we are in discussing him today than we were if we were doing this show a year ago today. If you go back and just take a few minutes, and everybody has smartphones, so take your smartphone out, use it for something other than Twitter, get on Google and type in Trey Lance OTA 2022 and look at the reports that you get. The reports are almost the same. They're talking about an improved throwing motion. One of the questions that was asked of Kyle Shanahan after the first practice last year was if Trey Lance is showing more of a 3-quarter release. Now, remember that 3-quarter things that we've talked about with Trey Lance this offseason as he's been working with Jeff Christensen, right? Is because you see him throwing a little bit more off to the side. And, from the folks that work with Christensen, that's part of helping him to get full extension and all those types of things. So you start to just go through all of the things that were discussed about Lance last year and the things that have been discussed about Trey Lance in the first 3 days after OTAs that we were able to sit down and watch or stand and watch. And it's pretty much the same. He was 17 of 20, 16 of 20, depending on the reports. I know I had him at 16 of 20 last year. Grant had him at 17 of 20. He go out this last week and he was 12 of 17, doing really good things. And when you start to look at it, we're not going to know who Trey Lance is. This is good. It's good that he's performing well. But in terms of what he's going to do for the 49ers in 2023, if he is indeed the quarterback, we're not going to know that based on anything that we're seeing what we saw on Tuesday, or what we're seeing on the little videos that were out from earlier in the offseason when he was working out.
Yeah, I mean it's great that he's throwing without pain. It's great that the finger's fully healed. It's great that the ball has less wobble. But really, that's just one aspect of it. Is how good of a ball does he throw? Then there's also about pace and touch and timing, and also can he get his completion percentage up? I mean, people say, well, completion percentage doesn't mean anything. Well, it does mean something. It means that you're connecting on passes. It doesn't mean anything in a vacuum because some teams may throw the ball all the way down the field, and other teams are just, Kyler Murray, when you look at Kingsbury's offense, where they're almost like little shovel passes, and, flipping 10 shovel passes, which are essentially running play handoffs to a running back, could give you 100% completion percentage, while somebody else is throwing 18 to 22-yard cut patterns down the field against man-to-man coverage. And so they could have a lower completion percentage, but be far more accurate. So I do understand that there are different offenses, but I think it can be revealing, especially when you're talking about players in the same offense doing the same kinds of things. Can Trey get that completion percentage up and hit all the layups, which is the flat pattern, the slants? Is he going to airmail those, or is he going to throw those with accuracy, touch, timing, and that kind of thing? So there's a lot that still has to be kind of figured out, and we won't really get a sense of it until we see him in camp this summer, in preseason games this summer, and we'll have a good sense of things at that point. What did you think overall of Darnold in the OTA throwing session? I mean, I felt like he looked to me like the best thrower out there, but then I was probably judging it a little bit more on the early throws. The later throws in the team portion of the practice, he was slightly inaccurate. He did have the one fumble. I know he fumbled. It's like, what? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, just from the standpoint of if he fumbles repeatedly, now we have issues. But a random fumble in the middle of OTAs in May, it's just, I'm sorry, I can't get exercised over that. No matter who fumbled, no matter how bad it was, but people pointed to that fumble, like the fumble. What did you think of Darnold's performance at the OTAs?
I thought that Darnold's performance was everything that we've heard talked about with Darnold this offseason, right? We've heard people say that how good of a thrower he is, that he is a tremendous thrower of the football. And that came through. And you watched him working the quarterback drills that they asked them to do. With they're throwing to either a ball boy, or some of those were to George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and those types of things. Most of them just kind of more stationary targets. But every ball that he threw during that part of practice was right on the money. I mean, it was right there, easy to catch, good balls, all that kind of stuff. And then you get into the 7-on-7 portion. And it's a little bit different because now he's got receivers that are running, and he's not hitting the guys in stride. There's guys that are having to turn and catch the ball, break their stride and turn and catch it, or there's a guy that's having to pick the ball up just before it hits the ground. On one of them, I think it was Willis making a really nice catch on that, and it wasn't as smooth, right? And so that was, I think, another part that was kind of to be expected. And I think we saw that from both quarterbacks, really. We saw Trey Lance with improved accuracy in the layup portion of practice, right? Just the easy throws. And the reason I mention that now is because there's plenty of examples on my channel from last year where he's making those throws, but he's throwing the ball over the head of the ball boy, right? Or throwing it at their feet and that kind of stuff. And so the fact that he was able to put all of those layups on the money, that's a positive. And so I think just going back to Darnold, really good thrower of the football, and it's going to take some time for him to figure out the offensive stuff. And if practices continue the way that they did on Tuesday, if we continue to see that on Wednesday of next week when we're there, and then the week after, and then through minicamp, it's going to be hard, I think, for Darnold to pass him because he's not outperforming Trey Lance at this point.
Darnold, the one thing that to me makes this quarterback situation, I mean, it's already juicy, right? Because you're talking about a Super Bowl contender, and you're talking about a team that his window to, the window to win the Super Bowl is open right now. And you're talking about an iconic franchise. And, some of the greatest quarterbacks this league has ever seen have suited up for the 49ers. So the 49ers are not just a team, another team. And this is not just another time. It's like this is a iconic team inside their Super Bowl window. We just talked about how they're the favorite to win the NFC, and yet the biggest position in football by far is the quarterback spot, and there's some indecision or some question marks hanging over it, and so it just makes this an incredible story. But what makes it that much juicier is that all three of these guys, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold, have this kind of "it better be me" kind of an approach to this thing. And that's not always the case in a quarterback debate or in a quarterback competition. Sometimes there's a guy there's heavy expectations, and he's kind of the incumbent, and everybody else is kind of like the challenger. But in this situation, Brock Purdy's trying to show that his draft status was a mistake, and that what you saw last year was not accidental, and that he's one of the great young quarterbacks in the game. Trey Lance is trying to show that, you know what, he the fact that the Niners invested all that to, they invested 4 draft picks to get him to be the face of the franchise. He's trying to show that he's an NFL quarterback, and he knows that the clock's ticking and it's go time for him. And then you got Sam Darnold, who's literally had 5 years as a top 5 pick. And if he can't do it here, the word around the league is going to be like, he can't do it. And Sam's been around the block enough to know it. So he knows that if he doesn't make it happen here, that his career as a starter is likely done, because this is viewed as a very favorable situation. So not only do you have a huge quarterback story in a very popular sport with an iconic franchise, you also have 3 guys who are hell-bent to win this job, and it means everything to them to win. So for that reason, I think this in some ways is one of the greatest quarterback competitions the league's ever seen.
Oh yeah, the fact that there's 3 of them. Usually in these kind of competitions, there's only one, and having all 3 of them eventually is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think it's interesting. It's too bad that Brock Purdy's not able to practice right now, because it would be great theater on top of it. The 49ers, I think they know the direction that they want to go. I think they know that they want this to be Brock Purdy's team. I think they've been pretty clear about that. And there's been a lot of talk this whole offseason. It's going to be funny, right? If we've had all this debate about Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, and then Brock Purdy is going to be the starting quarterback week 1 anyway, and all the debate that we've had all offseason is going to go away, and it's just going to be Brock Purdy doing his thing again. So I think that's kind of the way it's all going to play out. Just listen to what they're saying. It sure sounds to me like Brock Purdy is going to be ready to go a lot sooner than a lot of people thought.
One of the things that I think is really interesting was the Rich Eisen. I don't know if you saw Rich Eisen yesterday. Did you see Rich Eisen on his show talking about the Niners?
I did.
So I tweeted out that Rich Eisen clearly has a pipeline to the 49er front office. He's a huge fan of Lynch and Shanahan. I can't recall him ever being critical of either guy. He just on his show laid out their quarterback game plan and their thinking. And I asked the question, what do you guys believe? Does Rich have this much insight into on every team's position battles, or is he parroting what they've told him? And I've asked this question. I'm now getting indications from the chat from Haruku Hatoki, who says that SF Gate has now gone with this. Longtime sports radio host says 49ers are leaking directly to Eisen. I just told you what I put out there. So if there's a thing called a question mark, I asked the question. I said, do you believe that Rich has this much insight on everybody's position battles, or is he parroting what the 49ers have told him? So I'm asking the question if people believe that the 49ers have leaked to Rich Eisen. And now I guess it's being reported that I'm saying the 49ers are leaking directly to Rich Eisen. It's amazing how these things get twisted. But either way, it's there for everybody to read for themselves. What do you think? What do you think, Jack? I mean, is Rich Eisen on his show basically talked about this and said, Brock's the guy, and then even kind of suggested that, brought up the 5th-year option on Trey, and that the 49ers, might wind up, he kind of went down the Ian Rappaport lane again, where, hey, the 49ers might consider trading Trey Lance because they don't want to pay that 5th-year option, and it could happen this summer. And so this is coming from Eisen, who's an NFL Network guy, also coming through Rappaport, who's an NFL Network guy. And now, because I noticed it, I'm being thrown into the mix there. But what do you think of Eisen? I mean, Eisen doesn't ever criticize the 49ers, and he just went on his show and kind of laid out another scenario where Brock's here and Darnold's here and Brandon Allen's here and Trey's not here. What do you make of it?
I think, in listening to everything he said, it sounds, I don't know if he has a source that's giving him any inside information, because a lot of what I was hearing sounds really familiar. You look at the cost, for example, of Brock Purdy. He's $2 million over the next 2 years, not even $2 million against the salary cap for the 49ers. You run it all the way out to his final year of his contract, and it's not even $3 million over this time compared to what they would have to pay for Trey Lance. If Trey Lance is the starting quarterback this year and he blows it out, now you're looking at possibly having to use the 5th-year option, which is $20+ million for the quarterback spot. That makes it hard for the 49ers to keep all of their top-line talent that they have on their roster. We know that they're going to get Bosa done, but what about Brandon Ayuk with a long-term deal? What about some of these other guys as they come up for contracts and those types of things? What does their long-term situation look like? And if Brock Purdy can play at a high level, he makes the most sense. If Brock Purdy can continue where he was and those 8 starts that he had last year, he makes the most sense, because the amount of money that you're paying him is peanuts. Now, that leads into a lot of different discussions in terms of franchise quarterbacks and things like that we can talk about down the road. In terms of the 3 quarterbacks that are there, I think it's very similar to what we were just talking about earlier. Do the 49ers want to trade Trey Lance? Trading him out at this point saves them money against the salary cap. There's no salary cap ramifications necessarily. They save them some money this year. It's going to cost them some money next year. That's the only difference. I don't see the 49ers necessarily trading him, but based off of one day of watching how well Brandon Allen threw the football, my takeaway from Brandon Allen's practice on Tuesday was, is Brandon Allen Brock Purdy? Because Brock Purdy, you watch the 49ers quarterbacks on Tuesday, they're all dinking and dunking. They're all throwing in the short. That's not a shot, but that's not meant as a shot. What I'm saying is all the throws from Darnold and Lance are within 5 to 10 yards. And then you put Brandon Allen out there, and all of a sudden now the ball goes down the middle of the field for 15, 20 yards down the field to a tight end that's running wide open, and so the situation's interesting, and I think that I've always said that there's a possibility of a trade of Lance, but there was a lot of things that are going to happen or have to happen in order for that to occur, and there's still a lot of things, because at this point right now there's nobody around the NFL that's going to trade for him. They're not going to, and I don't foresee the 49ers just giving him up for nothing. They're going to be asking for a kind of like what they did with Garoppolo. It would be like a 2nd-round pick, and I just don't see that happening unless a high-level starter goes down. That's the only way that I see him being moved.
I'll go further than that. I don't think that it makes any sense for the 49ers to trade Trey Lance for a 2024 draft choice. I think the only way it makes sense to trade Trey, I mean, you're in your Super Bowl window, and quarterback is the most important position. Now, and your priorities of trying to win take precedent over his priorities of needing to get on the field. So you want to have as many quarterbacks as you possibly can have, I guess, would be the argument. So I wouldn't be in the business of wanting to move off of Trey unless I got a piece that would help me win the Super Bowl this year. Because I think you got to be able, if you're going to move Trey Lance, you're giving away the potential upside of whatever is coming in his future. And that could be immense. So you better be covered with some decent compensation. And then also you better be winning in the present. So my point is that if you're going to trade Trey Lance and look the Trent Williamses and the George Kittles and the Kyle Juszczyks and some of the veteran players in the eye and say, hey, we're going for it, you got to get Chase Young and you got to get Montez Sweat. I mean, you got to get somebody that can help you win games this year. And that would be an argument that I think if you moved to Trey Lance and got a premier edge rusher and said you're going with Brock and Darnold and Allen going forward, I think most people could understand that as, okay, you know what, they made a commitment and they're trying to win now, and this is helping them win now because they added a veteran, edge piece that can really help them win the Super Bowl this year. If you're just trading him for picks next year, are you really have a better chance to win this year if you've now thinned out your quarterback room? Yeah, you've cleared the decks for Brock, but I don't know that you're definitely not a better team by taking Trey out of the mix and only replacing him with a future draft choice that you won't be able to even utilize till 2024. So to me, it's like if they're going to move him, they have to get something that would help them compete for a Super Bowl this year. And that to me, I think if you move him for a pick, I think the pushback from the fans will be significant. If you moved him for Montez Sweat or Chase Young, I don't think the pushback would be as immense. It would be like, okay, they're going for it this year. So I don't know. That's just my read on it. I think that the idea of trading Trey for draft picks worked if you could do it this year and then use those picks to add significant players to help you win this year. And I get the sense from listening to John Lynch that they're going year to year. I mean, they are eager to win that sixth Lombardi, and they're going to, they want to, they'll worry about next year. Right now, they're worried about this year. And that's my sense of it. If they were going to move Trey, they would have to get somebody to help them this year, or I think there's going to be a lot of pushback from the fans.
Yeah, no, and that makes total sense because they've already built the roster the way it is. The roster is built. They have money that they can spend on guys. And unless you're getting somebody back, that totally makes sense. Again, that goes along with kind of where I am on it. I just don't see him being moved. I mean, I'm giving some examples of why it could make sense or where it could happen. But if you're asking me to put money on it, he's not moved. There's no reason to. They've already created the roster with his cap hit included. There's no benefit to that really for them on this season. And again, unless they can get something really high, I don't see that happening. And I don't see that pick coming anyway, based off of what's happened over the last 5 years at that position and in terms of trades after the season's begun. So Trey Lance will be a 49er, and that's a good thing for the team. The more solid quarterbacks you can have in that room, the better.
I mean, there's always that Carson Palmer situation where, some team loses, that some team that considers themselves a contender or has a lot of pressure to win in the present loses a quarterback in September, early October, reaches out to the 49ers at the trade deadline, something like that. But even so, I can't imagine they would reach out unless Trey shows a lot of upside in the preseason. I can't imagine he would be anybody's ideal guy to lead a playoff run based on just his age and inexperience. Randall says, here's a donation. He says, hey guys, thanks for the great content and putting up with my Sam Darnold love. There you go.
Yeah, Randall's a good guy.
Yeah, exactly. We also have this one. Michael Monahan has become a Krueger Show YouTube member. I always give a little clap for all my new members. Thank you, Michael Monahan. Also, okay, let's talk about the OTAs. Give me your big takeaway from OTAs. I mean, we always start quarterbacks and we talk tons about quarterbacks, but the reality is the entire team outside of, let's say, a dozen guys were running around out there. You were there. I was there. I could have swore I saw you write a couple things down. What were you writing? No. What were your takeaways from OTAs?
Yeah, couple of things. First one is sitting in the press room after OTAs, what struck me was how cool it is to be able to watch this process from day one through the end of the season, because we were able to sit there and watch rookie minicamp, and now we get to go to OTAs and the training camp and go through this whole process of watching this team get built. And it's the thing about this time of year is it's really about seeing who improves from one week to the next, or who is improving from year to year, especially on day one, right? It's like the first day of school. What did the guy do over the summer? And so for me, I look at it, and the first thing that jumps off is the rookies who looked good during rookie minicamp. Now, how do they look when they're out there with the veterans? And you look at that and you see guys like Spencer Wege, who you've talked about quite a bit, and you pointed him out to me as well. You look at guys like I thought Jake Moody, and the way that he was kicking the ball against the wind, I thought that was impressive. Not necessarily, and he's finally kicking up against a veteran. And you could see the difference in the leg strength between him and Gonzalez, I thought. You look at like Jalen Graham, he looks like he's a linebacker that could play for this team. Let's see who else was there. Darrell Luter Jr. Looking good still. You start to kind of go through those, and then you look at Drake Jackson. This guy's put on a bunch of strength and done everything that the 49ers kind of wanted him to do going into year two, building himself up. And he's looked bigger and stronger, and he doesn't look like he's lost. A lot of times when guys put on weight, it affects them in other places. Doesn't look like he's lost any of his speed or bend. Watching him, the way that he moves. Khalid Davis was another guy that jumped out at me with the way that he's able to move. It's good to see him, because we didn't get a chance. We never saw him until really late last year, and then when we did see him, it was very limited because we don't get to really watch much of practice once the season starts. So we didn't really get to see much of Khalid Davis. So getting to actually watch him play is going to be nice. And the guy that just keeps jumping off the page at me is Ronnie Bell, the wide receiver out of Michigan that the 49ers took in the 7th round. He just makes play after play. He made a couple of really nice catches in rookie minicamp. Comes back on Tuesday. I think he caught 6 of 7 balls. And the thing that really sticks out to me is he's catching passes in traffic, and he does a really good job going over the middle, which really, I think, fits Kyle Shanahan's system. They really like to work the middle of the field, and having a guy that can go across that area and isn't afraid to get those balls is good. And I really like what we're seeing out of Ronnie Bell. He really jumps off the page at me. And then one last one, Spencer Burford. Spencer Burford's a strong dude. When I saw him during rookie minicamp last year, I always like to stand down by the offensive linemen to watch them during their drills. And during rookie minicamp last year, just the hand strength, and when he popped guys, you could hear it. It sounded like Rocky Balboa in the movies, like that slapping sound. And he was partnered up with John Feliciano. And there was one play in particular where they're running the drill, and he pops him, and he pops Feliciano in the chest, and Feliciano's like starts rubbing himself, and he says something. He's basically telling him, "Hey, man, take it easy on me," So it was interesting. I'm really excited to see how these guys kind of progress throughout this process.
Let's talk a little bit about the receiver Ronnie Bell. I mean, it's funny. This is now 2 years in a row where the 49ers have taken somebody in the 7th round. And I at the time I was like, what? And then only to just do a total about face when I actually saw them on the field. 2 years ago was Brock Purdy. They drafted Brock Purdy. I watched him at Iowa State. I thought he was just a backup quarterback. And I'm like, really? They're going to invest a draft choice in a backup quarterback when they already have Trey Lance and they have Jimmy Garoppolo sitting right there if they want him and this and that. They're going to go with a backup quarterback who's kind of small. And I didn't see Purdy as a starting quarterback. And then, of course, he shows up in minicamp. He looked great. And then he showed up in training camp. He still looked great. And with the rest is history. This year it was Ronnie Bell. They've got Ayuk, they've got Jawan Jennings, they've got Debo, they've got Danny Gray, they've got Ray McLeod. I don't see a world that they keep 6 receivers and they've already got their 5 guys. And I can't picture Ronnie Bell at 6 feet and mid 4.5s 40, interrupting that in any way, shape, or form and earning a roster spot. Then I go to the rookie minicamp. The guy made every single catch. he made contested catches. Then I'm like, well, maybe it was just a lucky day. Then I see him at OTAs. He was phenomenal. He's kept making catches left and right, all kinds of different catches. The ball skills are off the charts. And then he's got this quickness and lower body explosiveness that kind of shines through when you watch him. The ball skills are undeniable. Ronnie Bell. I mean, who knew? And now, I would say this. I don't care what his 40 time is. His 40 times faster than Cooper Kupp. He's about the same size as Cooper Kupp. I'm not saying he's Cooper Kupp, but Ronnie Bell is an NFL caliber receiver. I'm convinced of it. And he's got a little bit more to his skill set than meets the eye. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a long-term solution here to replace Juwan Jennings, is what I said after practice on my stream. Was this is the guy who, with the skill set that he's shown so far, maybe that's the direction that they're leaning. The 49ers right now going into next season they're going to not have Juwan Jennings. They probably won't have Ray McLeod. That's where a guy like Ronnie Bell fits in. I think there's a good chance. I do think there's a chance that they can keep 6 wide receivers this year, just based on the way that you start looking at the roster. I think they can keep 6. Now, obviously, they won't have 6 up on game day, but I think there's an opportunity there for them to keep 6. He's going to push. He's also going to push Danny Gray as well. He's just making plays. I know Gray's faster and all that kind of stuff, but when it comes to actually being a football player and making plays, I think Ronnie Bell's right there for the 49ers.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's going to make the team. I still think they'll keep 5 receivers, and I think Danny Gray is going to make it because I think he means that much to, creating space with his ability to run off the coverage. So it's like Ray's position could be up for grabs. Heck, Juwan Jennings' position could be up for grabs. I mean, I would not be shocked if they love Ronnie Bell or Tay Martin or one of these inexpensive possession receivers, if they move Juwan Jennings for a day 3 pick at the cutdown. Would not surprise me at all. I mean, we'll see. There's a lot of football that has to be played between now and that point, but the depth that this team has at wide receiver suddenly is overwhelming. Now, where they're not deep, we go from one position where they're loaded to another position where they're not loaded, and that's defensive end. And I loved what I saw from Drake Jackson in the OTAs. If there was one guy that I was driving home thinking, wow, what did we just watch there? It was Drake, who has put on some good upper body weight. But I mean, it's not even just the upper body weight. He's got the same, if not the same speed, maybe greater speed, greater explosion. Man, he was hitting those bags and flying off the edge. That's the best I've ever seen Drake Jackson look. He looked like the best player on the field. And with Hargrave and Armstead and Bosa, if Drake can stay healthy and get on the field and get the lion's share of the reps, I think we're looking at a double-digit sack season from Jackson.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I actually I just talked about that yesterday. I think that he's the breakout candidate for this season. I think you look at him and he makes a ton of sense for the 49ers to be that breakout guy. Especially you look at the way that he got his sacks last year, right? He got 3 sacks during the early portion of the season. Those sacks primarily being just by being a worker and kind of cleaning up the pressures of other guys around him. You put Nick Bosa you put him on the field with Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on quarterbacks for him to be able to break down the pocket and get there. So I think you look at it, and for me, the breakout guy is going to be Drake Jackson. I just think I've been kind of bullish on him all offseason, thinking the 49ers really believe in him. And I think we're going to see that play out this year. I think that's the reason they haven't made a big move. Yannick Ngakoue is a name that a lot of people have been talking about this offseason with the 49ers. That's just not a name that makes sense to me. Most of the defensive ends that are out there right now as free agents don't make sense because they get good numbers, but they're getting numbers because they're also taking 60 to 70+ % of the snaps. And if you're the 49ers and you like Drake Jackson, you're not going to bring in and spend a bunch of money on a guy like Yannick Ngakoue who needs a lot of snaps to get his production. Instead, a better move would be somebody like Justin Houston. I could see them doing something along that path. So we'll see how it all works out.
Yeah, I mean Jason Pierre-Paul, Melvin Ingram. I mean, there's a number of guys out there. If Frank Clark. I mean, Leonard Floyd. I mean, Ngakwe. I mean, some of those guys are going to be too expensive, you would think. But to me, that's the final frontier for them. I mean, obviously the quarterback thing is big, right? You got to get the quarterback healthy. You got to figure out who your quarterback is. That quarterback's got to play well. I mean, they got to keep that guy upright. That's first and foremost. But beyond that, then there's the Colton McKivitz question. But I think Colton McKivitz, I was talking to Mayoko about this earlier. We both are in agreement that Colton McKivitz might be an upgrade from Mike McGlinchey as a pass protector. And I'm not really concerned about Colton McKivitz stepping in for McGlinchey, but I am concerned about what the Niner defensive end collection could look like if Bosa was hurt for a month. Or, you know what I'm saying? They go from Bosa and Drake Jackson to, Austin Bryant and Cleveland Farrell and Kerry Hyder. And there's a big drop off there. And they lost 700 snaps with the Ebukam, Willis, Menahue trio that walked out the door. They could probably use one more guy to come in and give that defense a little bit more teeth. That all being said, give me a camp battle. Position battle that you're really outside of quarterback and let's say outside of defensive end, since we covered those two. Give me a camp battle that you're really looking forward to seeing this summer.
Yeah, this one probably, this isn't a camp battle necessarily for a starting position. Maybe because there's one opening. Linebacker. The 49ers linebacking crew is so deep. You look and there's just so many guys that are there that can play that spot and play it at a high level. So that's one that I'm really looking forward to seeing who becomes the third starter alongside Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw? Because that one last year, they're losing Azeez Al-Shire. Are they going to go with Oren Burks there? Is he going to step into their role? Marcelino McCray-Ball can do it. Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles possibly. They look at what Jalen Graham's done so far, and he's looked really smooth. I really like what I've seen from him. So I think that that linebacker room is going to be a lot of fun to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean that one's interesting too because I thought Marcelino, is just in the greatest shape of his life. I mean I think McCrary Ball is going to step forward. I'm convinced that he's not just a guy who's going to make the roster. I think he's a guy that could be a star. I think he's a terrific player. He's got great instincts. He's got great movement ability. Knows how to play. Knows the defense. I think Marcelino's really special. And then I was talking to Keena Turner about Jalen Graham. Obviously, they have the Purdue connection. But Jalen Graham, I mean, you saw the Barrows piece from Scott McLuhan. McLuhan's got a very, very good eye for personnel, and he shouted out Jalen Graham. I liked Jalen Graham coming into this college football season. And just watching him on the practice field, you said it. I mean, that's the word I would use as well. There's a smoothness to Jalen Graham out there that, almost makes his 40 time irrelevant. I mean, I know he didn't run a slow 40 time, but it was more like 4.6. We see some guys running in the 4.4s now at linebacker, but Jalen Graham, D. Winters, and then you got three, and you got Marcelino, and then you got three special teams linebackers in Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, Curtis Robinson, Oren Burks. And then, of course, you got your stars in Greenlaw and Fred Warner. I mean, and typically you keep six. I mean, something's going to have to give there. Yeah,
absolutely. It's going to be really fun to watch how that one plays out for sure. I think that's one of them. Then you can get along the offensive line and tight end too. What about you, Larry? What's one that you're looking forward to seeing?
I want to see the tight end competition because, this one's going to be an emotional deal because, they've got the guys who are the incumbents, right? You got George Kittle, obviously Kittle's a star. And then you've got Charlie Warner, who's kind of a try-hard blocker, but he doesn't really, uproot anybody off the line of scrimmage. He's not the strongest inline blocker, but he's tenacious. And then you got Dwelly, who's a special team ace who very trustworthy on special teams and has, he's on the hands team. He's got great hands, runs really good routes, smart guy. But then you've got Braden Willis. And to me, Braden Willis really looked good in the OTAs. I mean, he's a super insanely competitive guy. He's a second and third effort guy. He's got great hands. He runs routes like a receiver. He's versatile like an H back. Could probably play a little fullback. He's really an attractive player. And then you invested a third round pick in the Alabama tight end, and to me, he doesn't look like much. And I've watched a lot of film on him, trying to be won over by what I see, but I just don't see any consistency there. I don't see anything that I'm like, can't wait for this, can't wait for that. He definitely has some fluidity like a basketball player, and he's definitely got some good size. 6'4", 6'5", 250. But I don't see. I just see like a guy. I don't think he tops out as a star or a starter. I think he tops out as like a number 2 tight end. So I thought that was a little bit of an odd pick, but in the third round. But I just think that they're going to want to keep Latu because of his draft position. They're going to want to keep Willis because of his versatility, and then they already have 2 kind of useful pieces to their special teams units and guys who know the offense and have experience. I just think that I'm not saying that any of those guys is a star, but I think the competition could be fierce because I think they're all relatively even.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying there regarding the tight ends and how this shakes out. If Latu's going to make the roster because he's a third round guy. Willis, I really like what I've seen out of him. The question mark coming in with Willis is, how does he transition to the NFL in terms of his blocking? And he looked pretty good to me. I don't know about you, but just watching a little bit of what we were able to see, on Tuesday with him working with Colton McKivitz in particular on his run blocking. He does a really nice job. He's so quick off the ball, does a good job of getting up to the second level and so on and so forth. So, I think he's a guy we watch and he really has good hands. It comes out at you. So, I think at the tight end room, if they're going to keep 4 like they've done in years past, it's going to come down to Dwelly and Charlie Warner. And then you need to look and see, well, which one of these 2 guys gives you some versatility when it comes to special teams. And Dwelly gives you better special teams play than Charlie Warner. I really, that's one, if they're going to move forward long-term with Cameron Latu and Braden Willis, maybe it's time that they're going to move off of Charlie Warner as having him be their tight end 2, tight end 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because to me, any grouping of those backups could easily make the roster. If you told me that the Niners cut their third round pick, I wouldn't be shocked. If you told me that that Braden Willis became tight end 2, that wouldn't shock me. I mean, they really could go in any direction there. Roadhog 228 says, when it comes to running back room, why are people assuming Elijah Mitchell is safe with his injury history compared to the undrafted free agent running backs? I don't know that anybody's really making any assumptions on Elijah, but Elijah, does have 4.3 speed. And in a lot of ways, he's a perfect finisher for Kyle Shanahan. Why? Because Elijah Mitchell can pick and slide and run between the tackles and gets the most out of every carry, but he also has only fumbled like 1 time in his entire life. The guy's really, really dependable with the ball in his hands. So if you saw the way that Shanahan late in the year utilized his backs, it was pretty clear how he did it. He went with McCaffrey in the first half and used him to make big plays, used him in the passing game, used him in any number of ways, used him heavily. And then when they got a lead and they were trying to ice the game, they're running Elijah between the tackles, knowing that he can pick and slide and get every extra yard and that he's not going to fumble the football. So I think that, Shanahan would be really content with those 2 if those were all he had. But now he's got Jordan Mason, who looks like a poor man's Marshawn Lynch. And he's got Ty Davis Price, who looked pretty good in these OTAs, very quick. And then the Niners have had such incredible success at finding undrafted rookie running backs, from Jeff Wilson to Raheem Mostert to JaMychal Hasty, go on through the list. And they got a couple of real attractive undrafted guys this year in Ronald Awatt out of UTEP and Kalen Laburn, who started at Florida State and then transferred to Marshall. So, I mean, they're pretty loaded at running back, but to me, the guy who's, I would say, has more pressure is Ty Davis Price. I mean, Elijah Mitchell has done it in the playoffs. He's done it, in regular season games. Jordan Mason has flashed. McCaffrey's going nowhere. Juice is going nowhere. So to me, it's really about Ty Davis Price competing against these rookies for maybe one spot, and that should be a hell of a competition, really.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is that it's not Mitchell. Mitchell's going to be around. It's Ty Davis Price trying to hold off those other guys because we know Mason has the speed. He's shown the ability to play well in this. He surpassed Ty Davis Price last year, and so if Elijah Mitchell looks just like he's always looked. He looked faster than heck out there the other day. He looked really nice. So,
Yeah.
as long as he's healthy, he's going to be out there. The 49ers aren't going to move off of him. It's Ty Davis Price against those undrafted free agents if they're going to keep 4 running backs at that spot. And then going back to the discussion on tight ends, I do want to shout out my guy Gav over in the comment section. Juice equals tight end 3 because I really believe that's true as well. Kyle Juszczyk's a fullback, but they utilize him a lot as a tight end. So. If the 49ers decide to keep only 3, or even if they have 4, they really have an extra tight end at all times because they can use Kyle Juszczyk in that role. It's funny. I don't know if you saw this, Larry, but I saw a little bit of somebody had posted some stuff on Twitter with Chris Koserick, not Chris Koserick, excuse me, Chris Verster, talking about the 49ers run game, working on talking about how they do certain things. And he actually was talking about in this one formation, how they have the 2 tight ends on the right side. One of those guys that was over there when you see the behind angle was actually Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah, I mean, and Juszczyk's a jack of all trades guy, very very smart, and and then there's Jack Coletto too, who can play almost 5 different spots or whatever, and he may give Juszczyk a run for his money. If not this year, I could see Coletto getting cut this year after training camp, put on the practice squad, lifting, running, learning the system, and being their backup if Juice goes down. And maybe the future, next year, they could save some money on the cap and go with Coletto as the fullback if they believe in him. What do you think of Steve Wilks? I mean, I asked Mayoka this question. I'll throw it to you as well, Jack. Steve Wilks' defense, it was kind of sold as Steve Wilks is here because of the fact that they wanted continuity on the defensive side, right? They didn't want to go from a 4-3 with the wide 9 front to some 34 front and a totally different defensive look. There was a lot of speculation about Fangio, who's really featured a 34 front almost everywhere he's been. And that would have been a dramatic change. And then would Vic come in but still stay, because we know they love Chris and what they're doing up front. They're having a lot of success there. Instead, they bring in Wilks, whose emphasis is more on the back end. And I get the sense that Wilks got the gig because of a couple reasons. One, his experience on the back end would help them find some good players, and I think they did in Luter and Brown, but also that they wanted to keep Chris in that wide 9 and that simplified, let's get up the field, hunt the quarterback. And they felt like it's had a lot of success, and I think they wanted to keep that same front 7. And Wilks kind of was the best guy with experience that they could get, and also kind of would not change the fundamentals of their scheme. So, but that being said, how does the defense look different under Steve than it did under D'Amico?
I don't think we're going to see. I don't think it's going to look dramatically different. It's going to look very similar. We might see a little bit more blitzing from the linebackers and the safeties. I think that might be in terms of what the overall difference is. I think it's just going to see a little bit more pressure up front. And they already have a really good pass rush to begin with. So now you kind of figure out a way to use a safety or Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw to bring pressure. And I think that's where we're going to see the biggest change in terms of what they do up front is from that point. The other thing I think we're going to see is seeing what this back half of the 49ers defense looks like, because now, they've always had their defense coordinator has always been a linebacker guy. Now that they have a DB guy, are we going to see that backfield, that defensive back room elevated? Because if that room can elevate a little bit more than where they were last year, you're going to get pressure up front to begin with that front 4 that you have. If that back half is doing a better job of locking down receivers, this is going to be a really good defense. That's a name I didn't talk about when we were talking about the guys that jumped out, and I should have. I blew it on that one. Isaiah Oliver looked really good. In the slot, he just locked down guys. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we see out of him because he is a really good cornerback in the slot.
Well, it's funny. The Isaiah Oliver story is interesting. He goes to Colorado. He was really billed as a top tier corner. I think he was an All-American or preseason All-American going into his final year in Boulder. Then he comes out, plays the outside, kind of got toasted, had some issues early in his career, and he was very hit and miss. This last year, they used him inside on the in the slot, and we saw the best that we've ever seen out of Isaiah Oliver, and obviously Wilkes, from being in that division, recognized it and plucked him in free agency. And I think Oliver is going to be a different player than Jimmy Ward. I mean, Jimmy Ward brought a physicality that was just awesome, but I think we saw it in the Kansas City game that the Niners coverage in the slot has been kind of not great.
Mhm.
Even when they had K'Wan Williams, K'Wan was an awesome run defender, in the slot from the slot, but his pass coverage was sometimes good, sometimes bad. He took some chances he didn't need to take. In this case, Oliver, I think, is not an upgrade on Jimmy Ward overall as a hitter, but he is definitely an upgrade on Jimmy Ward as a coverage player. And I think their coverage in a league that's going sub package 75% of the time, I think your coverage is vital, that you cover well, because it's a passing game right now. And I think Oliver gives them a more dependable cover player in the slot. And I think we've already started to see it.
Yeah, no, totally. That's why after the early part of free agency, I felt like the 49ers defense got a lot better. They're going to get a lot more pressure in the middle with Hargrave, and then you put this guy in the slot. I agree with you. I said it then, and I still believe it. What I saw on Tuesday only kind of reinforces it a little bit, is that Isaiah Oliver is a better cover guy in that spot than what they had with Jimmy Ward. And that alone, along with that additional pressure they can get from the middle, if Hargrave is doing what we expect him to do, that's going to make life miserable for quarterbacks, because that a lot of times those checkdowns are going to come into that slot guy, right? Because he's running those little quick underneath routes and things like that. If you can lock him down, it's going to make it really tough for that opposing offense.
One of the things I'm working on for the channel today is I'm doing a video on how the 49ers find starters on day 3 of the draft or after the draft as good as almost any team in pro football. And I just went through this regime since 2017. So we're talking about 2017 draft, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Obviously, we just had the 2023 draft. But let's just take the 2022 through 2017, the Lynch era, right? The Lynch and Shanahan era. If I said to you, how many starters have the 49ers been able to unearth on day 3 of the draft or after the draft under Lynch and Shanahan, what number would you throw out there without doing any research?
Without looking it up?
Yeah. We're talking about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drafts. 6 drafts. How many day 3 picks or undrafted free agents do you think have started for the 49ers?
Oh, have started? That's got to be probably that's got to be over 10. That's got to be like in the 15s at least, I would think.
Try closer to 25. Let me throw you this list. This is an amazing list. 2017, George Kittle, DJ Jones, Matt Breida, Kendrick Bourne is undrafted. Okay. 4 guys that year. 2018, 4 more guys. DJ Reed, Kentavious Street, Jeff Wilson, Emmanuel Mosley. So, now great. Street was only a part-time starter. Reed was only a part-time starter, eventually moved on, but they're starting caliber. 2019, Mitch Wishnowsky, Dre Greenlaw, and Kevin Givens and Azeez Al-Shaair. So, Givens maybe is borderline, but I'll give him that one. I'll say 4. 2020, Colton McKivitz, Juwan Jennings. That's 2. 2021, Diamador Lenore, Talanoa Hufanga, Elijah Mitchell. That's 3. 2022, last year's draft, Spencer Burford, Brock Purdy, Samuel Womack, and then I'm projecting Jordan Mason as a future starter and Marcelino McCrary-Ball as starting caliber. So I have 5 there. I've got like 22 guys.
Yeah,
that's a ton. That is an absolute ton. So I'll throw it to you this way. Looking at this year's draft, 2023, between the guys they drafted on day 3, which would be Darrell Luter Jr., Robert Beal, D. Winters, Braden Willis, Ronnie Bell, Jalen Graham, and then all the undrafted guys, and they had a dozen of them. A. Watt, Fisher, Coletto, Deshaun Jameson, Corey Luciano, Il Manning, Spencer Wagey, Avery Young, Mariano Sofi Marin, Shea Wyatt, Isaiah Winstead. Between their day 3 guys and their undrafted guys, who is going to emerge as a starter? Not necessarily this year, but just period.
Yeah, that's let's see. Just kind of looking through. I'm trying to think through those names. Ronnie Bell, I think, is going to be a guy that can move into a role in the slot. I know if you want to count that as a starter, Ronnie Bell's one of those names.
Absolutely.
For sure. Spencer Wagey is a guy who I think can. I don't know if he's going to make the roster necessarily this year, but I could see him be a guy that they really want to keep if he doesn't make it. And, have him stay as a practice squad guy and eventually move into that Kevin Givens type of role. But he's a bigger dude. He's got the speed of like a Kevin Givens, but he's a lot bigger. So maybe him there as well. Jalen Graham, I really like. I think I look at Jalen Graham and I see Fred Warner from 2018 in the way that he's built and the way that he moves. We'll see how he performs when they actually start popping. But that's another one to keep an eye on there. Darrell Luter Jr., I think, is going to be a solid number 3 guy for them this year. I think right now he's their 3rd, maybe 4th best cornerback on the, with what we've seen so far. He's better than Ambry Thomas. Travaris Ward. You have Travaris Ward as 1. You have DeAndre Lenore. He's 2. Those are your top 2 guys. And then I think your next 2 are Samuel Womack and Darrell Luter Jr. So he's right in that ballpark as well. So yeah, I mean, those are just a few of the ones right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Braden Willis. I think Braden Willis, you look at we talked about him, and I think Braden Willis is a guy who is overperforming from where he was drafted. I think he has a possibility of being a really nice player there as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have Darrell Luter Jr., who I think could challenge Demo Lenore for his starting job this year. And eventually I could see Luter being a starter. D. Winters, I think, is not going to start this year, but is a starting caliber player. I think Ronnie Bell, Braden Willis, Jalen Graham, maybe Wagey, maybe Deshaun Jameson, and maybe even one of those backs, maybe A. Watt or Laburn. I'm just saying it really, the Niners, you can be hyper negative and be like, man, they've screwed up on some of their high picks, and they have, and they got to own it. It's right. Your track record's your track record. You drafted, Reuben Foster, you drafted Solomon Thomas, but if you're going to bang on them on that front, you got to go do the homework on the back end on the day 3 and the undrafted guys and sit there and go, what? I bet you that you couldn't find another team in the NFL that had even 10 guys who started over the last 6 drafts from day 3 or after the draft, and the Niners have 22.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I think a part of that is because of the way the 49ers and a lot of teams around the league draft. If you look at the way that teams draft in the beginning, like in rounds 1, 2, and 3, and those picks are based off of traits, right? The traits. You have the traits. You got the fast guys. You got the guys that got the really strong arm for a quarterback. You got the guy that does this as a pass rusher, or that as an offensive lineman, what have you. Then you start to get into day 3 of the draft in rounds 4 through 7, and you start picking guys based off of their film. You're no longer basing guys off of their potential so much, but you're basing guys. You're like, this guy can do it. We've seen him do it. Now, can we get him to be a little bit better at the next level with our coaching? And I think that's why they've been so successful with it. I mean, And I say that in part based off of history. Like, go back to that 1986 49ers draft that everybody, really built the Super Bowl teams that won 88 and 89 and almost got back there in 1990. Those teams were built off of that 86 draft. And a big part of that 86 draft and all the stories that I've read was, Bill Walsh asking Ray Rhodes, hey, can you get Tim McKyer to this level? Can you get,
Don Griffin. Yeah.
Can you get Don Griffin to this level? Because I believe Griffin was a 6th-round pick of those two, and that
Kevin
was kind of
Fagan and other guys, Steve Wallace. Can you bring these guys along? Can you get them to that level? Yeah,
right. And they were there because that was a draft where it wasn't supposed to be really good in round one. So Walsh just got drafted and trading back and just got a boatload of picks and took football players all over the board. And they, that coaching staff in '86 and around that time was just so damn loaded. They built some really good football players out of it.
Well, and I'll tell you this, and if you look at these guys, if you say, well, what do they have in common? I'm going to talk about this in the video. When you get to day 3, everybody has a different philosophy. And some teams are looking for traits. Like, hey, you know what? I want this guy. Why? He runs 4.25. Yeah, he only caught 2 balls last year, but he runs 4.25. Or, I want this guy. Oh, he had 45 reps on the bench. Yeah, but he didn't make any plays against the run. Yeah, but who cares? He's the strongest guy that there is, and we'll take a chance. We'll coach him up. What the 49ers are doing is they're drafting guys who are good college football players who just don't fit the physical measurables for whatever reason. Brock Purdy, Talanoa Hufanga, they all have some perceived issue. For Purdy, it was the lack of size and arm strength. For Hufanga, it was lack of 40 time. And you see this. Or sometimes it's an injury. Sometimes it's a guy that for whatever reason wasn't featured. And sometimes guys just sneak through the cracks. And they've found a way. Sometimes it's a small school. Aziz Al-Shair played at a tiny little school, but he made like 400 tackles. And I think there was an injury his final year there where he didn't get to play. And so he got kind of looked over. So, it's amazing that they've had this kind of run after the draft or on day 3 of the draft. And it's really fueled their efforts to build a deep roster. And I would say, my pro personnel buddies that I know around the league going into last year, I said, where do the Niners roster stack up in the league? And they're like, between the Niners and the Eagles, those are the 2 deepest teams in the NFC. And I heard that 5 different times from different people who just like, you know what? It's like universally accepted that the Niners and the Eagles have the deepest roster in the NFC. Sure enough, they wind up in the NFC Championship game. And the same guy who made that claim also same people that made that claim also made the claim that Buffalo and Kansas City were the 2 deepest teams in the AFC. And we almost got, Bills Chiefs in the AFC Championship. So it just goes to show that even though coaching's a big factor, it's pro sports, and in pro sports, players win. And you want to get better players. And the 49ers have found a way to, under Lynch, do exactly that. They're getting players, and they're getting them consistently. Brother Bob, RLB2ESQ, says, Larry, name some dink and dunk quarterbacks in the league right now. Do not get me going down this road. That whole moniker. I don't even want to go in that dink and dunk quarterbacks in the league. Well, since that's an insult, I would say that there aren't too many. There aren't too many. And that's why I push back so hard on that whole comment, because if you look up dink and dunk quarterback, type that into Google and look what comes up, it's going to come up that it's a disparaging remark made about quarterbacks. You can't say this guy's dink and dunk, and I like him. That to me is like talking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't say the guy's dink and dunk over here and then over here go, but I really like him. Think he's really good. Well, dink and dunk to me and to most football people, that's an indicator of he can't make all the throws. He doesn't have what we would call requisite arm strength. And I think it doesn't fit Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy has already demonstrated that he does have requisite arm strength. All right. Give
But then
me
didn't Bart real quick before we move
Yeah,
off?
go
Didn't
ahead.
Bart
Yeah,
Bill
yeah.
didn't Bill Parcells like back in the day? Didn't he call the 49ers offense a dink and dunk offense under Joe Montana because that's what they did? Is they it was all those underneath throws and all those check down
He
throws and all that kind of stuff.
he basically tried to insult Walsh. But at the time the short passing game was not in vogue, and Walsh was ahead of his time,
Yeah,
and it was like, oh yeah, well, and he didn't like it. Why? Because he was a defensive guy and it was hard to defend it, you
yeah,
know. But yeah, I mean it's a way to insult your opponent into saying that you know what they're um, it's a way to illegitimize an opponent's offense, is to say it's just a dink and dunk offense. But to me it was always being used as a way um to basically say that the quarterback couldn't make all the throws, because at the end of the day that's what it's about. Can you make all the throws? If you can't make all the throws, and we've seen quarterbacks like that, Nick Mullins could not make all the throws. And so they stopped. Even Jimmy Garoppolo, you could argue, even though he had a great release, he really stopped throwing the ball down the field, and didn't hardly ever late in the down make plays outside the numbers. Where so what happened at the end of the Jimmy Garoppolo era? For the most part, you get late in the down, guys playing a zone, they're sitting right there on the hash. All of a sudden they're going to cheat 2 steps out or cheat 2 steps in. Guess what? They're cheating 2 steps in, because they're banking that it's going to be something in between the hash marks and not outside the hash marks. And that was the tendency on Garoppolo, and that's why I think you threw a few more picks, in that second to last year, because teams were cheating inside, late in the
yeah.
down on him, and expecting him to find something in the middle of the field. So we'll see where it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah, and I think that's where the difference is between a Garoppolo and Purdy, is that you could do that with Jimmy Garoppolo because you weren't worried about him being able to move, because he didn't have anything. He wasn't going to threaten you with his legs at all. Brock Purdy, you get a little bit of pressure on him if he needs to. He can use his legs to make things happen, or he can move around to kind of create different angles on some of those underneath throws too, where it's not just coming from that little pocket area. He can get outside, and all of a sudden, instead of it coming from here, he's getting a little bit. He's changing the launch point with his ability to move. I think that's really what the difference is between the two. The biggest
And if
difference.
Brock Purdy were truly a dink and dunk quarterback, he would not have the best passer rating in the NFL outside the numbers. And guess what? Brock Purdy had the best passer rating in the NFL outside the numbers. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a good fit, but I understand why
brother
people.
brother Bob in here trying to get us in trouble. Gee whiz.
No, seriously, he's stirring the pot. I'm gonna send this. I'm gonna cut this. I'm gonna tweet this. Yeah, go send it to SF Gate. Let them use it. SF Gate took a quote of mine, or tweet of mine yesterday, and turned it. Gabe Fernandez from SF Gate turned my tweet yesterday into an entire article on SF Gate. Wow, slow day at SF Gate. They're hunting for my tweets to turn into entire articles. And this is how he sums it up. If Rich Eisen were getting the big insider info Krueger claims he is, he'd probably be sharing much more interesting tidbits, like when Purdy is for sure returning. No, he wouldn't, because nobody knows for sure. Shanahan said only God knows that. Or if the number 2 spot is going to Lance or Darnold, no, he wouldn't be saying that either, because that will be determined on the playing field. Instead, we just got speculation from a longtime professional football watcher who's clearly so good at his job and his opinions that his opinions sound like Niner trade secrets to people who jump to conclusions based on Twitter clips. It was a question. We're having a discussion. Oh my goodness, people,
Yeah.
do what you got to do. Hey, you know what, SF Gate, do what you got to do, brother. If that gets you some people, more power to you. Okay, a couple last ones before we call it quits. What is the weakest part of the 49ers right now? What's the weakest unit on the entire field?
Man, that's a tough one because they're just so good across the board.
I know it's not necessarily really easy.
I mean, I guess if you want to call, I mean, do you say it's the offensive line, even though I don't really think the offensive line is the weakness that everybody thinks it is? And the only reason I say that is because you have no Mike McGlinchey, you have a little bit of a question mark at right tackle, but other than that, you're returning all four guys, four of the other five starters. I guess that would be, maybe it would have to be, I guess, offensive line, quarterback room, but just because you don't know. I think those are the two that would jump out at me.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it's easy. I think quarterback you could easily say, just because there's so much, there's so much left to be decided. Is Brock healthy? Is Brock the player that we saw last year? Is Trey going to emerge as a guy who was a star, was being the third pick in the draft? Is Sam Darnold going to emerge as a star now that he's with a good organization? Or are these guys not starting quarterbacks in the NFL? We don't know. So there's a lot of question marks at quarterback, but I think there's a lot of talent there too. Purdy, Lance, Darnold, Brandon Allen. At least you got four guys that nobody's too young, nobody's too old, everybody's in the prime of their career. I wouldn't be nervous if any of those four guys wound up starting a game this year for the 49ers. So I can't necessarily, and I can't say that about everybody's quarterback room. Most quarterback rooms, if you get to the second guy, you're nervous. In this situation, if Trey was the second guy, I wouldn't be nervous. If Darnold was the second guy, I wouldn't be nervous. If they had to lean on Brandon Allen, I wouldn't be nervous. I mean, maybe in a playoff atmosphere, but in a regular season game, I think they could win a regular season game with Brandon Allen in a run-heavy defensive slog. I would say the two spots for me are tight end behind Kittle and defensive end behind Bosa. Those would be my, you got Kittle and you got Bosa, and Kittle's awesome and Bosa's awesome. But behind Kittle, I don't know what Cameron Latou is going to be. I don't know if Charlie Warner or Braden Willis or Ross Dwelly or Troy Fumagalli. I don't know if any of these guys are really going to emerge. I got hope based on what I've seen from Willis. The other guys are just kind of like guys. I'm not enamored with any of their tight ends outside of Kittle and the potential for Willis. And then at defensive end, I mean, you got Bosa and you got Drake. But then, man, I mean, there's a drop off there. I mean, they had some great depth last year between Ebukam could be a starter, Amenahue could have been a starter, Jordan Willis was a suitable starter. I don't know that Cleveland Farrell's a suitable starter. He's got 10 sacks in 4 seasons. And Kerry Hyder is a try-hard guy with an awesome motor, a veteran guy, but he's not an every down defensive end in the NFL. He's more like a rotation piece, interior rusher, I think. And then Robert Beal looked really, small, and I don't know. I mean, he's got great speed, but that's a major projection. Austin Bryant, very skinny legs. Alex Barrett was a practice squad guy. To me, they're the depth behind Bosa and Jackson and the depth behind Kittle, defensive end and tight end would be my biggest concerns.
Yeah, I can see the edge piece with what you're talking there. I think the one thing that's a little bit different about this team, I think the first going to be a little bit different moving forward with Javon Hargrave, because this is the guy who can play a high volume of snaps. He's played a high number of snaps all of his seasons in Philadelphia. And if he's healthy and Eric Armstead's healthy, I don't see those as guys that come off the field. So maybe you don't, because they are very good pass rushers. So you don't necessarily need that guy like a Jordan Willis type of guy. Well, Jordan Willis is more of the edge guy. Charles Omenihu was a guy who was really the guy who was an edge guy, but played really well from the inside on pass rushing downs. If Eric Armstead's healthy and Javon Hargrave's healthy, I just don't see them necessarily needing that guy quite as much. Although I think Cleveland Farrell as a backup is going to be okay. But no, I can see why there's. I think they have a number of guys there, but it's just there's a lot of turnover, and they're going to need to get Farrell to play up to that level. And of that group, I agree with what you said on Beal. And then the other guy, Austin Bryant, you talk about a guy who's thin waisted, like, with his body type. I was not expecting to see a defensive end as slender as Austin Bryant. That's an interesting one to me.
Couple more minutes with Jack Hammer. We're having a good time on a Friday. Hope you guys are enjoying our live stream. Have great respect for Jack and the job that he does. Brother Bob, RLB, says, Larry, pig in a pickle. Bet we actually pay up at training camp. My bet is Lance starts off TC. What's TC? What's that? Oh, starts off training camp as QB1. I just gave you $5, so you already won. Take the bet. Starts well. What's the bet? You're saying that what I would have to bet that Darnold would be the quarterback one in camp. To me, it should be Trey Lance, and I know Sam Darnold has looked good as a thrower, and I agree with Mayoko's assessment that he's a unique thrower and one of the best throwers of the ball the Niners have seen. But we've also had 5 years to look at Sam Darnold, and you can't blame it all on the Jets and Panthers. I just think that Sam could emerge with the Niners, but he also could fall back and just continue to turn the ball over. And I didn't like him in the draft. I really didn't. And why? Because to me, guys who turn it over, it's kind of like there's certain things that are indicators about the future. If you sack the quarterback in college, your likelihood of sacking the quarterback in the pros is pretty good. I really believe collegiate sack production equals to some degree professional sack production. But then I also can on the negative side, I think that high interception totals in college are an indicator that you're going to have high interception totals in the pros. And Sam Darnold had high interception totals at USC, and he played on some really good teams. So I just think he's a little careless with the ball. I think there might be a little bit of a hitch in his throw and his release, so it's elongated. So from when he decides where he wants to go with the ball to the ball literally coming off his fingertips, I think that might be a tick longer than the average NFL quarterback, which gives DBs a chance to break on his passes a little bit better. I don't think it's all can be just say, oh, you know what? It's the Jets. It was the Panthers. No, Sam's going to own some of the struggles. So I would probably not. I can't bet you if I agree with you. So I agree that Trey Lance should be QB1 in camp, unless Brock Purdy's healthy, and then I would bet you, and I would say I would take Brock as QB1 in camp. Brother Bob.
But he's trying to bet me too. He said, okay, you hammer you down. I'm not down either. I'm not taking that bet because I think if Brock Purdy's not healthy, it's going to be Trey Lance at QB1 to start off in training camp. So no, I think that would just be betting to lose, and I don't feel like giving up my money or taking it picking a pickle makes is great food, but I don't want to take you over there. Just that's a bad bet.
That's right. We what we got to do is we'll get together during training camp at Pig and a Pickle and do a meetup, and we don't have to have any wagers on it. We'll all just head out to Corte Madera and meet up at Pig and a Pickle. Fish and Chips says weakest head coach. Weakest is the head coach. Need players to help the coach. Okay, I mean, there's no chance that Kyle Shanahan is the weakness. There's just no chance of that. I would say though, did you see the Ross Tucker head coaching rankings? Did you see where he ranked him? He's got Shanahan 6. I don't really take offense to 6 because there's a lot of good coaches. I think if you frame the question differently, if the question were framed with if every NFL coach today were a free agent, who would get the biggest contract? I think it would probably be Kyle Shanahan. I mean, I know Andy Reid is considered to be the best coach. Maybe Bill Belichick, if you want to go Belichick, based on full career. But those guys are older. Shanahan's younger. That factors in. I think that Shanahan, to have Sirianni at 5, who was an offensive coordinator for 3 seasons in Indianapolis. They never had a top 10 offense, let alone top 5 when he was there. Then with a team that was a loaded roster, they make it to the Super Bowl. They're the favorites in the Super Bowl. They blow a 10-point lead at halftime and lose to the Chiefs. but Sirianni's now, according to Ross Tucker, a top 5 NFL coach in front of Shanahan, in front of Sean McVay, who's won a Super Bowl, in front of John Harbaugh, who's won a Super Bowl, in front of Doug Peterson, who's won a Super Bowl, in front. I mean, no. So to me, that was Ross Tucker is probably based in the Northeast somewhere because he had Sirianni of the Eagles too high at 5, and then he had Brian Daboll, who I think's a nice coach, but what the heck's Brian Daboll ever won? They got Brian Daboll super high too. So I would say my guess on that is that Tucker's kind of a Northeast guy, has Northeast connections, and in the Northeast way of thinking, Sirianni and Daboll are stars. And I think that's putting the cart before the horse just a tad. I like Sirianni. I'm not saying I wouldn't have him in the top 15, but 5 overall in front of a bunch of coaches that have been to multiple Super Bowls or won Super Bowls. Ross Tucker, let's pump the brakes. Or maybe it's Ross Tucker Sirianni. Maybe he's related to Sirianni somehow.
No, I'm pretty sure that you're right on that. I think Ross Tucker is from like the Philadelphia area. I think he's in the Pennsylvania area. So he's in that area. I didn't think too much about that in terms of where Sirianni was ranked as a head coach based on the way that his team has performed in his 2 seasons as a head coach in Philadelphia. He turned them around real quick, got them to a playoffs in year 1, got to the Super Bowl in year 2. So from that standpoint, I don't have a problem with him being where he is. I'd look more at like the Sean Payton at being number 3 right now. I'm not sure if Sean Payton deserves to be at the number 3 spot. This is a guy who won, he had a top level quarterback that he inherited, I believe, when he took the job in New Orleans. In Drew Brees, or maybe they joined together. He had
why is Sean Payton's singular Super Bowl more impressive than Sean McVay's singular Super Bowl?
Right, and the Sean Payton one, I don't get him necessarily being at number 4. That doesn't make sense to me. The Daboll and Brian Daboll being ranked ahead of Pete Carroll, I don't agree with that one either. I think Pete Carroll's a better head coach than Brian Daboll. He did a really good job last year. He's completely turning that Seattle team around after getting rid of Russ Wilson. So I don't agree with that one either. But in terms of Sirianni, I personally, from a football perspective, I really like what Sirianni does. I like the fact that he is just he's relatively basic when it comes to what he tries to do on offense, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Basically, hey, we're going to line up and we're going to do these things at a high level, but not do too much. And it allows his team to play fast and physical. And I like that part of what he does.
Fish and Chips says, why are you guys not talking about the kicker controversy? Yeah. Jake Moody. Now it's funny, I saw this stream that Grant did with Vish, and he said, Jack, I was standing right next to Jack, and Jack had it down. Because I think David Lombardi said that Moody didn't miss a field goal, but I think he just missed it. Basically, they each took 4 field goals, and they all made their 3 shorter field goals, and they both missed their longest field goal. How was their longest field goal? 48? Was it 50? Do you remember how long that longest field goal was?
Yeah, so they both made from 33, 38, and 43, and they both missed from 48. I mean, I could see why David missed it. If you just look at the kicks, they both look like they went through actually. But if you're actually paying attention, looking at the referees on the field, they were clearly saying that they were wrong. And I think poor Dave, I think he was the only guy that actually had them down as or had that as a make for Jake Moody. I think everybody else that I saw had that as a miss too. But the thing that if you want to have a kicker controversy, that's totally fine. I think that Jake Moody, you line those 2 guys up and just watching the 2 kick the ball next to each other, it's clear that Jake Moody has the stronger of the 2 legs. I mean, the kick that he made from 38 yards, the ball looked like it was just barely hitting his apex when it went through the goalpost. I mean, I think he probably, and we're talking about kicking into a pretty strong headwind too. I mean, he wasn't even close on his field goals. Even the 48-yarder, he just missed it wide to the left, but that thing cleared the upright so high. That's why I think he couldn't tell if it was good or not without looking at the ref.
They invested a 3rd round pick. Now, granted, it was a post 3rd round, so more like a compensatory pick, almost like a 4th round pick. But talk about a guy who's got the upper hand on the job, right? I mean, Jake Moody. Zane Gonzalez will literally have to be dramatically better than Jake Moody to win that job, right, Jack? I mean, if they're anywhere in the ballpark, Moody's getting the roster spot, don't you think?
Yeah, Moody's going to be the kicker for the 49ers. Gonzalez was brought in as a guy in case they didn't get the guy that they wanted. That's the only reason why Zane Gonzalez was picked up, and I know they traded for him, but if he's not on the roster, he's not going to count anything against the 49ers. It's going to be Moody's team, and this is one of those things that's been an interesting lot of discussion on Twitter about this whole thing and on content from streams and all those kind of things. The Brandon McManus. How much did they cost? How much did Brandon McManus cost the Jacksonville Jaguars? Probably a couple $1 million. And the 49ers have a guy who they're not going to even have to pay. It's much less for Jake Moody, and they have him locked in for as long as they want, as long as he does the job. I don't know. You have a stacked roster. I think it allows you to make some moves like this at times that maybe aren't necessarily the direction that you think that you should go. But I think this is for the 49ers and where they were. I have no problem with it. I have no beef at all with the pick of Jake Moody.
My inside 49ers source said Krueger, Moody, Robbie Gould's future with the 49ers was finished as soon as the Niners signed Javon Hargrave. That because they gave so much money to Hargrave that they had to cut corners in several spots financially, and one of them where they could save, roughly $4.5 million was kicker. And so they decided to go with the rookie kicker instead of the veteran kicker. And you know what? I mean, Robbie Gould is a great player, 18 years in the NFL. He's still out there, right? He's not signed yet, right? Does he have a home yet?
Robbie Gould?
Yeah.
No, he's still out in Chicago looking for somebody to come and knock on the door.
Yeah. So, it's just, to me, I guess it's about the cap, simply about the cap. Yeah. If they had more cap room, maybe they could have brought Robbie Gould back. Two last ones. Ronald, it wouldn't be a live stream, Grant, if Ronald Grant didn't say you both are so biased, Trey haters. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I love that one, and then I look at what Bobby D439 says, and that's a good one where he says, I have a question for the Trey fans. A lot of people say Brock only wins because of the team around him, but y'all complain that Trey didn't have Kittle or CMC. How do you justify that? I think it's a fun conversation. It's definitely something to look at.
Well, and speaking of McCaffrey, how incredible was McCaffrey in the OTAs? I mean, he looked like if Drake Jackson was the best defensive player on the field, Christian McCaffrey was the best player on the field. Just the fact that he was out there doing his thing, but I mean, he brought it, man, and he really kind of set the tone for the workout with the intensity and the how hard he practiced. I mean, that was great to see. I think there's a chance that McCaffrey could be even better this year than what we saw last year based on what I've seen thus far.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because we didn't get a chance to really see. We've never seen Christian McCaffrey go through an off season before. We just saw a little bit of what happened during the season, and we don't get this. We just get to see little bits of practice during the season. What I saw, what I started to think of, I was obviously never really around a lot when it came. I was not a reporter in any way when Jerry Rice was a member of the 49ers. I mean, I used to go to training camp practice up in Rockland with my parents, but I was a kid, so I wasn't paying attention to it like as closely as I do now. But that's what if I was going to compare what we saw from him, it would be like similar to what the stories that you hear about Jerry Rice and Roger Craig and those guys from those great teams about how hard they practice and how it was like always at the same speed. Because Christian McCaffrey, when they were running plays, there was nothing slow at all about anything he was doing. It was full go, ripping as fast as you can through the line of scrimmage and full speed ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, and funny, I wasn't covering the Niners then either, but I went to Sac State and I used to go to Rockland every summer and sit up there and, get sunburned watching the Niners practice against the Chargers. I can remember the heyday of Jerry Rice and Junior Seau, and they stood out. I mean, they really stood out. Jerry stood out. Junior stood out. There was a lot of great memories watching those practices, but the one thing that Jerry and Roger would do is they would take a 15-yard pass or a 15-yard run and then run just for shits and giggles 45 yards after it in this unbelievable heat, and then do it all again on the next play, and do it all again on the next play, and do it all again. I mean, Jerry and Roger set the tone, and what we saw in these OTAs was exactly the same thing. McCaffrey didn't just run the ball and get 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. He's running 40, 45 yards down the field. And what I loved about it is many of the D tackles on, Chris Kosarek's D line were running down the field as well. And the camaraderie as they're all jogging back to the huddle was noticeable. I mean, these guys are, they're high-fiving, and they're kind of body high-fiving, and they're kind of, McCaffrey's celebrating their effort. They're celebrating his effort. And the vibe was just awesome. It was incredible to see. And I'll say this, we'll finish with this one. If I'm going with a deep sleeper in training camp, I'm going to go with Spencer Wagee or Wagee. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but which is sad since I did a 35-minute interview with the guy. I probably should know how to pronounce his last name. But he really was a couple of those McCaffrey runs. I mean, he's literally running 45 yards down the field, just showing his motor and showing his hustle and showing his desire. And that kid looks terrific to me. He tore up his knee in 2021. He doesn't have any kind of a knee sleeve. As Dusty Gold says here, Wagee equals motor. Yeah, I mean, his motor was cooking, and he's 300 pounds, but his get off is incredible. His hand placement's incredible. The desire, the country strength. Watch out for 69. Yes, in camp, Spencer Wagee. He's something else, man. If this guy doesn't shine this summer, I'll be shocked. He's my deep sleeper. Do you have a deep sleeper for camp, Jack, before we pull a finish to this thing?
I don't know if I have a super deep sleeper. I do think if I was going to say something, I would say that Colton McKivitz is going to be better than people think. Let's go with that one. I think Colton McKivitz, he's going to start at right tackle for the 49ers, and he's going to be better than what people have expected from him. This is a guy who's a really good run blocker. He just needs to improve in pass protection, and he's working on that. And you can see that at camp, or at least practice on Tuesday and stuff. And so I think he's going to be a guy that's going to surprise some people this year.
Yeah, Colton McKivitz. It's funny. We talked to Trent Williams last year about Colton McKivitz, and he was super impressed by Colton McKivitz in that he's like, there's never a moment that's too big for Colton. There's never an opponent that worries him. There's never an opponent where you feel like he's afraid. There's never an opponent where he's intimidated or feels like he doesn't belong. I mean, Colton McKivitz, in a lot of ways, is exactly what you are looking for in a lineman. He's just like a old school backwoods tough guy. His dad makes raccoon hats out of dead raccoons. The guy, I'm at the stoplight crossing Tasman at the end of last year, and he pulls up in his truck, and he sees I'm standing there, and he goes, "Krueger," and I look over, and he kind of gives me the hold on a second, and he reaches into his center console, and he pulls out some duck calling thing, quack 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 quack. He starts. I mean, and this is who the guy is, man. He likes to hunt. He likes to fish. He's an outdoorsman. He's the kind of guy that if you had a critter in your attic and he came over and you told him, I think I got a critter in my attic. I'm thinking about calling, blankety. I'll just go up there and get it. Let me just go up. You got access to your attic? Yeah, it's through up there. Yeah, let me just get up there and get that critter for you. I mean, he's that kind of a guy. He's like a backwoods tough ass, and he's not intimidated. He's not afraid. He's not, oh no, here comes Aaron Donald. Oh no, here comes Leonard Floyd. He doesn't have an oh no mode. He's like, just very, very confident. I mean, it's awesome. It's an incredible thing to watch. And I agree. I think he's gonna thrive in his moment. He's not gonna make a big deal about it. It's gonna be uncomfortable for him that there'll be more people at his locker wanting to talk to him. But if he can get beyond that, he'll be fine on the field.
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking forward to it. He seems the 49ers have won games with him the last couple of years, and if he can just get out there and if he can beat Mike McGlinchey this season in terms of what he can do out there with how cheap he is, that's a big win for the 49ers.
No doubt. And Greg Escon says gold helmet designation. Yeah, the Niners have that, special category for players they love. And I think Trey Lance got one. Talanoa Hufanga got one. In this draft, they gave it to Braden Willis and somebody else. Oh, Jair Brown, I believe. And Colton McKivitz was one of the guys who was given a gold helmet designation. So they loved him coming out of West Virginia. They actually cut him once. But he's back. Now he's the starter at right tackle, and I'm expecting good things. All right, that does it for us. Jack, tell people, what you got cooking on your channel. It's Friday. Are you done streaming for the day? Are you back at it later? What's the next thing from the Jack Hammer channel?
Yeah, check it out. I don't do as many streams right now as I used to. I've kind of changed up, things a little bit. I had lost the monetization on my channel about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And so I started looking at doing things a little bit differently. So I don't do streams as much as I do shorter videos of different topics that are taking place. So, but if you check out the channel, you're going to see those. You're going to see a bunch of stuff from practice and kind of going through those cut ups and putting those up there. There's a full breakdown already with all the video there, and then there'll be some other ones that I'll be putting up as well. So there's always new stuff that I'm putting up there right now between the shorts and the regular stuff. Plenty to check out there. And then also get yourself over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Going to be a nice piece going up later on this afternoon on Trey Lance.
Yeah, dude, you do an incredible job. So video wise, how many videos do you wind up doing in a day? Is it the same every day? You do 4 or 5, 6 or 7, or you like Grant, you put out 10, 12, 16 videos a day? How many videos and shorts can Jack Hammer come up with in a day of the off season?
No, I'm not Grant's at a different level. I'm if somebody asked you this question earlier, if you want to talk compare me, I'm the dink and dunk content creator when it comes to, if you compare me to Grant's the big arm guy. He can pump out videos like nobody's business. For myself, I'm not doing that much. I usually, I'll put up at least one video. I try to get up at least one video a day, somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes on whatever topic I feel like is interesting to the folks. And so, I did one a couple days ago that was regarding who I think the breakout player is going to be. Yesterday, It was a little bit regarding some of the discussions that I've seen this week around Brock Purdy. And I've got this one up today. I've got some shorts and some other videos that have already been queued up. So I tried. One of the things that I don't flood my channel. I try to give things time for people to check it out. Doesn't mean that anybody's doing it right or wrong. It's just the way that I'm going about it, and it seems to be working for me right now.
Multiple people. Jack, why'd you lose monetization? J-Tan, what happened to the monetization?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't really know. The reason that I was given was something with regards to I think what had happened was I had put up a couple of workout videos of guys working out that I got from off of their Instagram and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people that are doing it. And on those videos, I just put it up there with some music behind it, but not me talking. And so that's the only thing that I can think of. And I didn't ask YouTube. And instead of fighting it, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to wait for 30 days. I wasn't really happy with where I was in terms of my views and those types of things at that point anyway. And so I just got back to work. And instead of just doing the same thing that I was always doing, I figured I needed to change it up. Everybody's doing the same kind of thing, and I decided to go a little bit of a different route, and it's been working for me.
Good for you. Good for you. By the way, one more super chat here from Flav, who's making a name for himself. He says, I don't think people understand how hard it is to not complete over 60% of your passes in a Kyle Shanahan offense. It's impressively bad, actually. Flav has got a very strong point of view. Fish and Chips reacting to Flav's presence. Oh, no, Flav. Clarsard says Flav is a dink and dunk viewer. Oh my God. All I'll say is I saw on Twitter that Adam Copeland from KMBR was like, "Who the F is Flav?" And all I would say is, "Hey Copes, it's 2023. Who the fuck is anybody?" Right? At the end of the day, I mean, seriously, let's not bang on Flav. I mean, seriously, anybody who's got an opinion is can be heard. We're all on an equal playing field. So instead of saying who the F is Flav, maybe we should ask that the better question is, who the F are any of us at the end of the day? And Flav comes back with a LOL. Who is Adam Copeland? Oh, that is strong. That is strong. Jack, have a great weekend, my friend. Happy Memorial Day weekend, or I'm not sure if it's happy Memorial Day, but you know what I'm saying. Enjoy the holiday. We will see you in Santa Clara Wednesday, I believe. We get OTAs next week.
Yep, Wednesday will be our day for OTAs this week. I'm looking forward to it. This I gotta say that real quick before we go. This is my favorite time. I get that I can get through the off season. But when we get to actually go and talk about football, this is what I love. I love, like, I don't know, for the people that watch my channel, if you watch like my post-practice breakdowns, those are the shows that I feel like those are where I hope that everybody gets where my enjoyment for what I do comes through there, because I love football and I love talking about it. And so for me, the grind is the off season, and it's the constant throwing stuff up against the wall and seeing it sticks that happens there. That I get myself into trouble with arguing with people because I call them out on it. And I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm just talking. I can get myself in a lot of trouble with a lot of people with that kind of stuff. And I'm looking forward to it. I love watching these guys practice. I love the process. And I can't wait to get out there Wednesday. I woke up on Tuesday and I told my girlfriend before I left, I get to go watch Trey Lance throw today. I'm excited. And it was a great day.
Oh, absolutely. And Bucko says, appreciate your super analytical view, Jack. Yeah, no, you put out good content, and you're present, you're covering it. You know, you got a point of view, and you know what? I think you put out some great content and have tremendous credibility. So keep it rolling, Jack. We'll see you Wednesday down in Santa Clara. Have a great weekend, and thanks for coming on. And it was a pleasure doing both this kind of co-branded show, and I appreciate. Well, I guess do I even say goodbye to you in a co-branded show? I mean, why would I be saying goodbye to you? You have your own channel. How do we typically end the co-branded shows?
Well, if you're done talking and you're not going to, I know a lot of times when we hang up on this, you still have some more things that you want to say. If you want to keep going, you can. If you want to end the show, let's just tell everybody, get out of here, go have a good Friday, come back to Larry's channel for his next show, because Larry works way harder than me at this stuff. So check out. You're probably going to be talking about Giants at some point today, right, Larry?
What if I'm just like, everybody get the hell out of here? Like it's, and take your bottles with you, and you don't walk across my neighbor's lawn, damn it. And you guys better be back here. No, I'll play a couple spots, but Jack, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. You too. Take care.
There you go. The great Jack Hammer in the house. All right. We will hit the chat here momentarily, but first let me get a word from our sponsors on the Krueger Show. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, 2 locations, Corte Madera and Emeryville. Here's what they look like in Corte Madera.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it. Hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. We'll take one more perusal of the chat. People asking, is this the final show of today? You know what? I might go a little post game tonight. I may go a little post game Giants tonight. Maybe invite Danny over. 5:00 start. Maybe around 8:00 tonight. Maybe a little post game Giants after Alex Wood and Freddie Peralta lock horns. Maybe around 8:00. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not really sure. I definitely am working on this video. I already kind of told you guys about it. I'm working on a video that's coming out later today. The 49ers have done an incredible job of building a deep roster. And how have they done it? Well, they've done it by hitting on day 3 and after the draft. And I would say they hit day 3 and after the draft better than anybody else. Digital Drew says, "Hey, how about a Krug phone?" Yeah, we could do a little Krug phone. You guys want to jump in right now on a little Krug phone action? We can do that. I'll put the we can take a couple calls here before we bolt out of the door. There we go. I just put it in the chat and I just hit click. So there you go. Krug Show is the with the link right there. Polyester says cone phone. Watch out! Watch out! Mark Graves. It's only 2 p.m., Larry. Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. I love you, boy, but you're fucking lazy. But yes, Fish and Chip says green beard. Larry with the green beard. Yes, I do have my green light. I'll turn it off. God, it really bugs people. Green light gone. Green light just gives me a little. I like the green light. It's not always green. It's normally a colored light, but it's the battery's down, so it only goes green, blue now. It used to be all kinds of colors. I could have all kinds of colors on there. Play with it and mess around with it. But anyway, I just wanted to say thanks to all of you for joining the Krug Show, being supporters of the Krug Show. Thanks to Matt Mayoko from earlier today. Thanks to Jack Hammer from earlier today. Let's see. What else? Oh, I wanted to check how many subs we're at right here. We just got to 18,000 the other day. We are now at 18,261. Wow. The channel is growing by leaps and bounds. So if you want to help the channel, hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, that just helps the algorithm and helps more people kind of find the shows, which is cool. And then if you hit subscribe, every time we go live, you'll get an alert on your phone that says, hey, Krueger's going live and he's talking about whatever. And then you can just hit the link and quickly join in. And then of course, people also pay $4.99 a month to be Krug Show channel members, and they get special content that other members don't get. So, that is that. Dusty Gold says, let's push Krug past Lombardi. Wow, now we're getting competitive here. I think Dave's pretty far out there. By the way, Dave's in Prague. He'll be joining us on the show next week from OTAs, and we'll talk a little bit with the great Dave Lombardi, who covers the 49ers for The Athletic. So, this is a an emotional weekend for me in a lot of fronts. My dad, who's no longer with us, was an army man. He was a JAG Corps attorney in the 60s, and I love him. Obviously, he's my father. I love him greatly. He's no longer with us, but I just wanted to thank him for his service to our country, and thank you and my grandfather fought in World War One. Was in Paris and wind up, fighting for, on the front lines of World War One. And my father never served any, it was never in any wars, but he served our country as well. And I just great respect for everybody who's lost their life trying to make this world a better world for all of us. And then also I had an aunt who died of cancer on Memorial Day, and so I think of her quite a bit. And it's just, to me, it's a time to remember the people that came before us, the people that paved the way so that our lives could be easier. And I just have great respect for older people. It's like I feel like we're the one society that doesn't really give the amount of respect to our elders as other societies do. And that's unfortunate. And I remember when I worked in the CFL for Bill Urbanic, he used to say, "Larry, youth is wasted on the young." And it's a great line, and it's absolutely true. And then he used to say to me, "Old people know everything and young people know nothing." And that was his way of saying, "Don't talk back to me, kid. I know more than you, a lot more than you, and don't ever effing forget it." But there's a lot of truth in that, and I've always had great respect for my elders, just because, if we just take the time to ask questions and listen, the people that have come before us will give us a lot of help and a lot of assistance and a lot of guidance. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's come before us. Dusty Gold said salute to the Krugers. Thank you for that, Dusty. And I just, Luke Luna jumping in here. My grandfather who raised me served in the Navy in World War II. Luke, good to hear from you. I just think this is a weekend where I just thank God for my health, for my family, for my channel, for my wife, my children, my brothers, my sisters, my friends, and just that life has been good to me. I just feel very fortunate, and it's a great world that we're in, where we can sit here and do this for a living. Watching the 49ers practice, and the only tough part of our day is when we're arguing with each other about a diversion, a life diversion. I mean, sports is truly the toy department of life. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I don't want to be morbid or get into any long lecture to anybody, because I really don't have anything to lecture anybody about. But I just wanted to say thank you to the people that came before us, and I appreciate the people that made 2023 a good year in my life. So thanks to everybody, and if you serve our country, all the better. I know it's on Veterans Day, it's Memorial Day, but there's a lot of people. We're all so busy, right? You're busy doing your thing. I'm busy doing my thing. Digital Drew's busy making Mortal Kombat better in Chicago, and everybody's doing their thing. But sometimes it's good to just kind of stop, kind of reflect, and just say thank you. So thank you to everybody who needs to be thanked on this Memorial Day weekend, and hope you guys all have a phenomenal weekend and have a great barbecue, and tip one back for Krug. On that note, we go to the Pig in a Pickle guest line for our good friend Digital Drew from Chicago. Digital,
Hey,
how are you, man? Good to see you.
Doing great.
Wait a second.
Uh-oh.
Camera got hot.
Cameras.
The camera got hot. So wait a second. Hold on. Go to the settings. I can switch cameras. That's the beautiful part about having so many different cameras. And like that, oh, I'm back. Now the camera's not quite as good, but I'm still back.
I don't know, man. It looks pretty good from here.
There we go.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
I got the
yeah.
really nice camera, the nice Sony, and then I've got
Okay.
the Logitech Brio. And the Brio is nice too, but it's not quite as nice. But you know what? It's right there. And then I've got 3 other cameras over here if I want to go to. So we're back. We're rolling.
Nice, man. Good to see you again, Larry. It's been a minute, but for obvious reasons, you know, I've been quite busy, as you can imagine.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat. Tell us the latest in Mortal Kombat land.
Yeah, we just announced a couple weeks ago now. MK1 we are shipping on, or it'll be available September 19th. You can go out and pre-order it now. And I think we have our gameplay reveal trailer. I believe it's June 8th. I have to confirm that. I do believe it's June 8th. But yeah, so
big
it's coming
developments
at
in
us
your
fast
world,
and
huh?
furious. Oh
Yeah,
God, yeah.
And how's
Yeah.
that now? How does that change your day to day? You know, or does it at all? 'Cause you're doing like R&D, right?
Yeah, development of the game itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
it you know, once we become public, nothing actually changes in our day to day per se, but everything becomes way more real. You're just like, oh my God, I can't believe it's coming, it's here. You are now on the clock, tick, tick, tick. Nerves, you know, start going through the roof. But our studio's done an incredible job this time trying to keep the pace sustainable and you know, trying to keep the stress at a minimum. So, you know, hats off to the NRS, you know, crew for killing it as always.
Now,
Great
did I since you've last joined us, have you changed your camera?
I have not. I have
Okay.
not. It's still my
Because you look very
Canon
clear,
EOS.
and your video game in the background, your stand-up video Mortal Kombat, looks a little less clear than it has in the past, but you look exceptionally clear. I was just wondering.
Yeah, finally, I dialed in the camera just a little bit, did some fine tuning on the Canon EOS, so it's a little bit better finally.
There you go. So,
but
what do you think? We've been talking a lot of Niners today, and I've seen you in some of the streams, but we haven't had a chance to talk face to face in a while. What's your sense of where the 49ers are at? Here we are as the calendar's almost getting ready to turn to June.
Yeah, you know what? I know that it's fun and it fills a lot of content and a lot of air to talk about the quarterback situation, but
it's exhausting.
Wow, it is, but at the same time, what an embarrassment of riches that the Niners find themselves in. That you got an absolute gem in a 7th round pick in Purdy, and then you got the 1st round pick who, by all accounts, sounds like he's changed his approach. He's working out with Mahomes in the offseason. He might be coming along. He might threaten. And then you got Sam Darnold, who I'm not as low on as everybody else is, because just like running backs in the Shanahan system, I think he can also elevate the floor for certain quarterbacks. I think Darnold is one of those guys. So, you know, and the Niners, as usual, and I know you and Hammer hit on it during this stream, how are they finding these gems on day 3 and after the draft? They just kill it in that department. Do you have to put that credit on the scouting teams of just say, go find people that fit our scheme and then give us a list and we're just going to sign them? I don't know how they do it. Why other teams aren't as successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, when it gets to day 3, digital, I think it comes right down to everybody's got a different approach. Some guys, some teams are like, you know what? Just give me that guy who's got one unbelievable trait that we value. Maybe that trait's foot speed. Maybe that trait is strength. Maybe that trait is height or whatever it is. And they go for team. You see it all the time in day 3 of the draft. It's like guys get drafted and it's like, well, wait a second. That guy wasn't even a good football player. Well, the 49ers, I think, you know, who's available on day 3, either athletes, like premier athletes who didn't have great production, or really good college football players who don't profile as great athletes. And then people choose one or the other. It's like, I can have the athlete or I can have the proven college player. And, the Ravens may say, give me the athlete. But the 49ers have been saying, give me the college football star. And they're drafting guys who are, we're not talking about, they call the combine the underwear Olympics. We're not talking about a track meet. We're talking about a football game. Football is not baseball,
Yes.
but there's still a lot of skill involved. And just because there were all kinds of receivers that were drafted who weren't anything, that were drafted ahead of Ronnie Bell, who played in the Big Ten and was, Jim Harbaugh's number one receiver for the last couple of years, and a very, very productive guy. The Niners said, you know what? We don't care that he's only 6 feet. We don't care that he's only ran 4.5 and that there's some guy out there who ran 4.3 who we could get. We're going to take the receiver who actually did it in the Big Ten, and they bring in a Ronnie Bell. We're going to take – we don't care. Somebody's going to draft a quarterback who's 6'6" with a howitzer and played at some Division III school and are going to project him to the pros. Other people are going to say, you know what? Give me that guy, Brock Purdy, who did it in the Big 12 and, got a non-power team like Iowa State to a Fiesta Bowl. And it's like, so they're drafting players that are football players but lack some physical upside, and they're figuring out if that physical limitation is going to be a deal breaker. And in two cases at least, and there's many more, I could point to many more, but definitely in the case of Purdy and maybe in the case of Ronnie Bell, they felt like, hey, you know what? The physical limitations are maybe exaggerated, but the production is real. So like for Brock, like I was pissed when they drafted him because I didn't know that there was more there to be found as far as his skill set. I didn't realize that he had that quickness, and I didn't think that he could improve his arm strength. And I saw him play at Iowa State, and it was kind of unimpressive. It was very much a college-like arm. But between his college season and the draft, he went to Arizona, worked on his mechanics, and actually found 4 or 5 miles an hour of extra velocity. And by the time I saw him in minicamp, he looked very comparable to the other quarterbacks on the field as far as velocity and better than them as far as accuracy. So he kind of closed that gap between his college film, which like Lance Zierlein in his scouting report on NFL.com references Purdy's lack of arm strength in his report. And I would have written the same kind of report if I only watched his college film because that's what he showed. But after college and before the draft, he improved that arm strength by working on technique and mechanics. And it was just enough to get him from slightly below requisite arm strength to slightly above requisite arm strength. And that makes all the difference in the world. And then you mix in the 155 10-yard split, which shows really high-level quickness. And ultimately what the Niners got was a quarterback who had success and experience, but had a better arm than he showed in college, and it's now shown itself, and better quickness than I think people realize by how he worked out. And we saw it this year. He was a very difficult guy to sack. So, in a way they got lucky. In a way they really did their due diligence and their homework on this player and were smart, knew more about what Brock Purdy's skill set was going to look like than other teams. And to some degree they were fortunate, but to some degree, I'm sure you got to credit whoever was the scout. There was some guy, and I think it was, I forget the guy's name, Slowick, I think, either Bobby Slowick or Kevin Slowick or one of the Slowick brothers pounded the table in the pre-draft discussions for Brock Purdy, got Lynch's attention, got the attention of the room, was compelling enough in their argument to make the Niners interested, and they pulled the trigger. And really, you could argue that the drafting of Brock Purdy might be the number one thing that is going to save Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, because normally you take a quarterback in the top 3 in the draft and you trade 4 draft picks and 3 number 1 picks to position yourself for that quarterback, and that guy year 3 has still not done it. There's usually heads are rolling and there's a lot of guys are getting fired and people are pointing the finger. But because they also discovered Brock, I don't want to say it's a wash, but in some ways, I'm sure it's a wash.
Yeah, to a point. And to hop on that specifically, I know that it's trendy or it feels good, especially after heartbreaking losses, like the Niners have seen over the last few seasons, to jump on Kyle, to jump on the front office and really give them crap. But haven't you noticed a trend of something is always saving them? Well, eventually that stops. You have to stop thinking about that as an accident, as though plan B, plan C, plan D come into fruition. So they're thinking long term. So you have to give them credit for that, right? Of finding guys like Purdy, keeping Jimmy around. Imagine last season if they didn't keep Jimmy around and everybody wanted to criticize it, but all of a sudden it's there. So you got to give credit where credit's due.
And I don't even blame. I don't blame him for the Lance pick either, because I was right there with them saying Lance is the guy. Lance is the guy. Lance is the guy. And I just think they were wowed by the makeup of the kid, and they just said, you know what, his makeup will overcome all else. And I think they're right about that. And I think ultimately they're going to be proven right on that. But it's going to take some time. But I really believe that they fell in love with Trey's makeup as a person, as a worker, as a dedicated prospect that's going to work to improve his weaknesses. And I think they were right in making that determination, because I think that's exactly who he is. And it's not over yet. It's like people like to talk about like this quarterback thing like it's decided. It's not. Right now, I mean, going into last year, Trey was the leader. Brock was a distant down the track, right? Now going into this year, Brock's the leader and Trey's off the pace. But the race ain't over. And everybody is still running. So this whole this is the way it is. This is the way it is today. That doesn't mean that it's going to be the way it is in a month. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the way it is in September. So we just all need to just kind of pump the brakes. It's not a sentence. We're talking about something that he's evolving over time. Right now, Brock's the number one guy, but you never know the way this is going to go. And I expect Trey to get nothing but better. And eventually, his skill set, once he gains experience, may wind up being comparable or superior to what Brock is offering the team right now. We don't know. So just everybody kind of sees things as they are in the present. Nobody sees how the potentially can be in the future. And it's just like, you just gotta today. Yeah. Brock's number one, but you don't know about the future, and we'll see where it goes. It's the only way I can really say it.
Yeah, for sure. And, I know that there's a lot of people in the chat like, why do you guys hate Trey Lance so much? There's no hate there. I don't think there's
BMAC is asking this question. Why do you hate Trey Lance? What have you heard from anybody on this stream or any stream that would lead you to the conclusion that there's anybody hating Trey Lance? I mean, if you think that's directed at me, you didn't listen to me on KMBR leading into that draft saying over and over and over again, they need to take Lance over Fields, over Mac Jones. You didn't see me that night as I was pumping my fist saying, yes, they got the right guy. And I still believe they got the right guy. It just hasn't happened yet. And give it time. I said it last year. I said, I love Trey Lance as a prospect. I just don't know if it's going to happen on the timeline that the 49ers and their fans want it to happen on. Like, if you said to me, is Trey Lance going to fulfill his potential this year? I don't know. Is Trey Lance going to fulfill his potential? Yes, he is. But this year, I don't know. But long term, I do know.
Sure.
And I feel he will. So that's why I'd be hesitant to trade him unless I got something really significant coming back.
Yeah, I'm ejecting into space all that trade talk for Trey Lance. Shush. We have no idea what we have. But that's also part of the problem. He's been around 3 years, and straight real talk, I don't think anybody can have an opinion on Lance at this point. You can have hopes. He hasn't shown us anything. He hasn't got the run. Isn't it since 2019? The guy has played a total of 5 football games. Right. What do we know about him? Everything at this point is completely speculation, and it's hope on the intangibles. Or he has a great arm. He can move around the pocket. Great. Just like Purdy got overlooked Can Trey show it in the games? Can he show it in camp? Can he earn that spot? He has been here 3 years and he hasn't done it yet. Any negativity could be couched in that reality. But at the same time, we don't know what he has because he needs to get into the games. And if history is any teacher or predictor, the Niners go way deep into their quarterback bench throughout the season. He's going to get his shot. What does he do with it? We saw what Purdy did with his shot. Trey, you're going to get your crack at it. Even if Purdy comes out as the starter, that means each week the Niners is 1 week at a time who's going to be the quarterback. Depends on health.
Totally. And also, I mean, it's eventually going to depend on finances. I mean, the other thing I think is that, they were prioritizing Trey's timeline, but then as time has gone on and, there's pressure on Lynch and Shanahan, despite the 3 trips to the NFC Championship game in the last 4 seasons. There's pressure in an organization like the 49ers that, grades itself on Super Bowl trophies in the Lombardi case, in the trophy case. How many Lombardis do you have? Nothing short of winning that Lombardi is going to be enough for Jed or the family or the fans. And there's nothing cruel about that. It's just reality. And, so until that happens, there's pressure on John and Kyle to win. And I just think that if you say, why are they so in on Purdy? I just think they're absolutely in on their timeline, which is win a Super Bowl. The only Super Bowl you can win is this year's Super Bowl. And because Brock seems to be more ready to play right now, they're all in on Brock. But that's just because they're all in on winning this year's Super Bowl. And they'll worry about next year's Super Bowl next year. So I don't think that they've changed their thinking on Trey Lance at all. I just think that they know that they can't waste any more seasons because of quarterback development or quarterback injuries. So that's why Sam Darnold's here. And that's why, they're going with Brock, because they're not going to prioritize quarterback development. They're going to prioritize winning games, and they're not going to prioritize, quarterback health. They don't know about the health of Purdy. They don't know about the health of Lance because of the injuries he's had. And so I think that's the impetus for why Darnold is sitting there. And at the end of the day, I like that Darnold is sitting there because either Darnold can play or he can't, but he definitely has the skills to play. And now it's just a matter of, in their system, with their scheme and their play caller and their weapons and their line, can he have success in this organization? We don't know, but I'd rather take a chance. The one thing I said at the end of last year, and I'm sure many of you said it as well, they can't go into next year without a room full of guys they're confident they can win NFL games with. I love Josh Johnson, but you couldn't win an NFL. Look what happened when they went to him. And they can't go to guys who are super young. They can't go to guys who are super old. They can't go to guys who are just there because they live locally. They got to go to guys that they actually think they can win with. And now I think they actually have 4 guys that are in the prime of their career. They're not too young. They're not too old. And they think they can win with that. And to me, until you have your guy, until you know what your quarterback is or who your quarterback is, that's the best way to play it. Get as many guys as you can who are potentially in their prime and could potentially win a game for you. I feel good about. That's why if you ask Shanahan about his quarterback room, he'd be like, "I feel great about it," because he knows he's got he's got 4 guys that he feels like, you know what? If we had to go out there with Lance, Darnold, Purdy, or Allen, we're okay. How many teams in pro football literally have 2 guys that they feel good about, let alone 4 guys that they feel like they could win with? So that if you see Kyle say, we feel really good about our quarterback room, that's why.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you 100%. And it is. I mean, back to the very first thing I said, what an embarrassment of riches that you have these options, that we have this to talk about, right? Of like, well, who's going to take over? Is it going to be the first round pick? Is it going to be the Cinderella story 7th round? Is it a veteran with potential, that really hasn't found a system for him? I mean, give Hollywood a couple years, maybe they write a storyline that good. But I don't know. It's going to be, as a fan, I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled as a Niners fan. We got winning. We got all this drama. We have an offseason that, even though we didn't have a pick till the third round, still an offseason we're talking about. Could you
No
ask
doubt.
for more? As a fan, could you ask for more? And
I mean, take the Bears, for example. You're there in Chicago. Let's talk about the Bears for a second. They've got Justin Fields, right? And then
Yeah.
they also have PJ Walker. And they have Nathan Peterman, who's not been very good. And then they drafted this kid out of Shepherd named Tyson Badgett. Well, there's a lot of people that feel like Tyson Badgett is kind of a sleeper quarterback. But what do they have 4 guys they can win with? I don't know. I mean,
No, they have
Fields, Fields is really nice as a runner and developing as a thrower. Walker's had some highlight moments. Peterman, I'm not a big fan of, but a lot of people talk up Badgett. But you see what I'm saying there? It's like they've got Fields, and then after Fields, I don't know that they can win with Peterman or Walker or Badgett. Then they probably can't. And that's typical of most teams around the NFL. I mean, I'll give you another team. Let's go to the Rams for a second in the division. The Rams have Stafford, okay, and then they drafted Stetson Bennett. And by the way, Stetson Bennett went in the 4th round, largely because Brock Purdy was great last year. Otherwise, Stetson Bennett probably would have been a 7th round pick. But because he's kind of this year's, hope of being Brock Purdy, they took him in the 4th round. They also have Brett Rippon and somebody named Dresser Wynn. Well, I mean, so it's Stafford, and then you're going to a rookie and a guy with a rag arm and Brett Rippon. So they're kind of 1 deep, maybe 2 deep at quarterback, and that's most teams in pro football. So the 49ers are in a great position at quarterback for sure.
100% agree. Kind of a slight pivot, but more of a kind of a macro look at the Bay Area sports, 2 teams in particular. Have you noticed or put together the striking similarities between the situations and the windows of opportunity both the Warriors and the Niners find themselves in, both in their draft picks and everything else? So if we look at the Niners, they have a need at quarterback. They trade up to a pretty high pick. They came off a really successful season, then had a down season, found themselves at number 3 and took Trey Lance. The Warriors had a very down season because of injuries and reconstructing the lineup. They found themselves at number 2 and took Wiseman. But with both of those people, both franchises find themselves in win now windows. So they can't, but both of them have chose developmental players. And the outcome, at least I hope with the Niners, it's different, but with the Warriors, they're like, we just can't wait for you. You got to go. And they got him out of town. Hopefully Lance has a different story, but I'm shocked at how similar those storylines are and those situations are, where they have win now, but they took projects. They're trying to retool. They're pressing real hard to get another championship going. I find it really interesting. I don't know if you've thought about that or noticed the similarities. They got talent they're trying to keep. With the Warriors, you got Dre and you got Clay. Are they going to keep both? They're going to sign both. Who knows? And on the Niners side, you got to extend. What's his face? I don't know why his brain is Bosa, and then you got Ayuk on the other side of the ball. You're like, all right, what do we do here? We're going to have to extend both. Do we have the money? It's kind of like, all right, should we put all our eggs in that basket? I don't know. So it shocking.
I mean, it illustrates
timelines.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it illustrates kind of how the people that created the concept of drafts, where the best team gets the last pick and the worst team gets the first pick, is there's something really powerful and that there's several things that work with that we never really analyze. We just kind of take it for granted because the worst teams always get the best players and the best teams always get the worst players, and it always just seems to work out. And now here we get a situation where 2 teams that were really among the best teams get one of the best players, and then it doesn't work out. Well, because it's especially in the NBA, a lot of times the guys at the top of the draft they're not the most ready to contribute players. They're the players with the biggest upside. I was just looking at NBADraft.net yesterday because I had Matt Babcock on talking about the workouts in Chicago and the upcoming NBA draft. And I noticed when I looked at the list that of the top 15 players in the draft for the NBA draft, like 2 of them come from the international markets and the rest of them are freshmen. They were all college freshmen because that's the rule now, that high school players can't go straight to the league. And so what happens is now guys go 1 year of college, or, the select team that plays in the G League, and they play for 1 year and then they enter the draft. So all the top prospects are typically freshmen. And so the NBA draft has become much more of a speculative draft, and it's all about your future upside. And yet it actually benefits some of the better teams because they get more developed players that slide through the cracks, and the freshmen, or the raw freshmen and the raw prospects, go to these bad teams, and those bad teams can invest all kinds of floor time and minutes in these players because they're bad teams. And they don't even really have a culture. So it doesn't matter if this young kid comes in and doesn't really respect their culture. They don't have a culture anyway. So it all kind of works out. And that these teams, sometimes the young players develop, sometimes they don't. In the Warriors case, they got a player that, they were trying, that needed development. They tried to it's kind of like the one common denominator in the whole Wiseman Lance thing is that anytime you're picking a player at the top of the draft and the sample size of their collegiate resume is really short, you're taking a risk. Trey was a 1-year starter in an FCS level. James Wiseman played 3 collegiate games. And so they're being drafted based on workouts and projections and not production at their level, or at least not proven consistent production at their level. And so there's a little bit more of a risk. And now the Warriors, just decided that they were going to listen to their veteran players. I'm sure their veteran players were like, Wiseman doesn't know how to play. We can't play with him. Okay, but I mean, you hired developmental people to develop him and coach him up, and they didn't do it. And so they couldn't get him developed. And then the Warriors just quit and said, we'll trade him for a veteran 30-year-old 2-guard. And now the Warriors have squandered their second pick in the draft, and they've turned it into a 21-year-old 7-footer who can run the floor. And now that 7-footer is turned into a 30-year-old backup 2-guard who plays defense only. And so they've shortchanged themselves. With the 49ers, they took an investment on a quarterback with a short resume. And, similar to Mitchell Trubisky and a couple others, when you're a 1-year starter, there's a lot more unknowns. And, they found out that this quarterback needs more development. It doesn't mean that he can't develop. It just means that he needs playing time. And it's like, what comes first? Can you develop? Can you develop and then you get to play, or can you play and then you get to develop? I mean, it's like what's, that's the problem the Warriors and Niners have both run into. It's like Trey needs to develop, Trey needs to play. Okay, but we need to win. And our timeline of us needing to win is going to be prioritized over his timeline of needing to develop. And the Warriors did the same thing with Wiseman. It's like, hey, if I were the Warriors, knowing the NBA is what it is, I would have just said, you know what, guys, if we're really going to go with Kuminga, Moody, and Wiseman, then we have to commit to the fact that we can make the playoffs in any spot. And we can't get nervous if we slide down and we're the 8th seed. We just got to develop our guys and make the playoffs. But in that order, in that priority, we need to develop our guys first. We need to make the playoffs second. Well, they got 10 games into it, started to sweat and started to feel the pressure of like, oh man, we're going to squander Steph Curry's prime. We're going to squander his opportunity to run it back and win a title. So screw Wiseman's development. It's now our timeline's going to rule the day. And to a similar degree, the 49ers did the same thing with Lance. They gave him last year, but now all of a sudden they're feeling a little pressure to win a title. And they're like, you know what? Screw Trey's development. Our timeline is going to take priority over his timeline. And that's really all that's happened here. Brock Purdy is ready to win now. And so they're prioritizing Brock. And people are reading all kinds of things into it. But the reality is, if Trey were ready to play now, they'd be sitting Brock. They're going to the guy who's ready to play now, because that they're feeling like their timeline needs to be prioritized. So unfortunately for the Warriors, the Wiseman things now come and gone. They've divested themselves of the asset. They've taken the loss on it. And that trade can look nothing but horrible over the next 15 years as James Wiseman learns how to play basketball and becomes you would think, a 10-year starter in the NBA. Or he's not going to ever develop, and he's going to float around, and he's never going to quite be what anybody wants. And maybe they'll be vindicated over time. But short term, their deal should favor them short term, and they didn't win short term. And it should have favored the Pistons long term, and we're going to find out to what degree it favors them. And as far as the Niners, they're still with Lance, but I'm getting the sense from listening to the Eisens and the Rappaports that if Brock Purdy's healthy, they're going with Brock. And whether Lance is here for this year or not, they're not going to pick up that fifth-year option, which is an average of the top 10 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. That price is going to be too exorbitant. So what is his future? His future, my guess, is going to be elsewhere if Brock plays well and Darnold looks like a suitable replacement, unless Lance, in the meantime, takes the preseason, shows what he's got, plays at a really high level, flips a switch, and becomes this productive player. Then that would force them to kind of reassess the pecking order and what their plan is. But that's my sense of it, is that there's no way they're going to exercise that fifth-year option on Lance at a huge dollar amount, but they also don't want to give him away this year because why? You need insurance policy at quarterback. But right now, until he shows that he can play, and start and win games for them, which he hasn't been given the opportunity to really do yet, we're all just kind of projecting. So the similarities are really interesting. The only thing I'll say is that, man, I mean, the 49ers and the Warriors both should have had a little bit more realistic approach to, it's like they all love the idea. The Warriors love the idea of Wiseman. I think the Niners love the idea of Lance, but were either franchise ready to pay the price to develop the young player? I don't think so. And so it's I'm looking at the Niners, and I brought this up over a year ago. I'm like, when, do the Niners, are they willing to take the lumps and lose the games that it may require to bring Trey along? And it's like, I just couldn't picture it. The fan base, I can't picture the fan base. Could you imagine if the 49ers went with Trey Lance and started 0-4? I mean, people would be losing their mind. There would not be anybody sitting there going, well, you know what? No, it doesn't matter about this year. We just need to develop this young quarterback. No, they wouldn't be saying that. They'd be like, get anybody else in there. Doesn't matter. Win games, So that's kind of the way of the world in the NFL. And there's just not a lot of time to develop. So
the similarities actually go a step further than that. If you look at what Wiseman is not a bang it inside kind of center. He's more of a wing than anything else. At least that's his mentality and skill set.
He looks happiest when he's facing up from the perimeter.
Right. And so, but the Warriors drafted him and went, oh, okay, we got this new guy. He looks great. All right, we want you to get inside and go bang it out. He's like, hey, that's not what I do. And so he really wasn't enthused. And then Trey Lance, same thing of like, hey, I'm a guy who rolls out. I'm a guy who will extend the play, find guys downfield. He was doing that great in the preseason. And then Shanahan tried to put him in this very narrow, small box. And he just wasn't successful. So you're picking something and trying to turn them into something they're not, on top of the project reality of that player as well. So it's even adding a difficulty curve to these picks that is kind of self-induced. It's a self-inflicted wound at that point. You're just making it harder for them. So maybe Detroit also gets away with it.
And also there are more comparisons that are apt. I mean, the Warrior players really liked James Wiseman. And, he was a nice kid. He's a smart kid. He speaks Mandarin. He's guy's very, very intelligent, very popular among the, Klay Thompson brought him on his boat. It wasn't like was like, oh, we can't stand this guy. It's like, no, they liked him. And the Niner players love Trey. I mean, I can tell you, I'm in the room. I see the reaction. There's no group of people in that room that are like, Trey sucks, No, they love Trey. They've now they know that he's got some development needed, but there's not like a group of people going, don't start Trey. At least if there is, I haven't seen it. The players are overwhelmingly positive about Trey's future. It's really more just about the NFL. The 49ers are trying to win each and every Sunday. And it's just a matter of the only thing I didn't like about the Niners, the way they talked about Trey and bring along Trey's. I don't like the fact that Kyle calls him a dual threat quarterback and won't just call the same plays that he calls for the other quarterbacks for Trey. I saw it in the Arizona game. There were 16 running plays. Like 9 were designed runs and 7 were quarterback scrambles. And like on the 9 designed runs, he took a hit on all 9 runs. And he averaged like on the designed runs, he averaged like 3 yards a carry. And on the scrambles, he took a hit like a third of the time and he averaged like 13 yards per scramble. And to me, it's like, I want to see Trey Lance operate from the pocket and then just allow him to scramble the way any quarterback would be allowed to scramble. I don't need quarterback power out of the shotgun with no lead blocker. Go be Marcus Allen and pick and slide between the tackles. I don't like that plan. I never liked that plan. So I kind of wonder why, if that's the plan, then I don't think it's going to work. Because
you got
no quarterback can stay healthy doing that.
No, it's what other team? I mean, you asked the question, what other team has the fortunate situation? What other team treats their quarterback like that? Hey, just go up there. And I know people throw out Josh Allen. Yeah, look at him at the end of the season. Josh Allen was beat up, and he just did not have the legs to carry him through the playoffs. So can he take it? Yeah. Is it a smart move? Absolutely not. Health is everything when you get in the playoffs. And you got to treat it. You got to protect it. I mean, in today's NFL, nothing is more protected than the quarterback. Why are you going to throw all that out the window and then just say, yeah, run up the 2 gap? Good luck. That's dumb.
I mean, can we discuss risk reward? Why are 2 yards in a random game worth the health of your quarterback? Because you're risking the health of your quarterback and you're gaining 2 yards. So I'd like to have somebody who knows more about football explain to me why a 3-yard gain between the tackles is more important than the health of my quarterback. And there is nobody that can answer that question because it hasn't been thought through, and people that defend it, and I've talked to Steve Young about this, and Steve agreed with me, but he's also like, hey, Krug, maybe there was at that point in time in the Arizona game that was what Kyle felt like Trey could do. And I get that, but that's not sustainable. And that was my argument. Just that whether you like it, don't like it, whether he's got a legitimate reason or not a legitimate reason, at the end of the day, all that really matters is it a sustainable, workable plan? And it is not.
Yep.
So
also saying if that's all he can do, isn't that saying it without saying it? Like the kid ain't ready. The kid, he doesn't have it. All I can do is run him up the middle. I mean, is that really what he's saying? Because that's what it sounds like to me. Reading the, in between the lines there, it's like, wow, you could just treat him like a running back. Are you saying you didn't have a quarterback?
Yeah, I just would really prefer to see him try to make plays from the pocket and fail before I'm going to accept your premise that he can't do it. It's like, I'm with you that he can't do it if you show me that he can't do it. But I need to be shown that he can't do it. I'm sorry. I can't just take your word for it. I need to be. I need to see it. I need to see Trey not be able to move the team from the pocket, and I need to see the team punt repeatedly and see that repeatedly before I'm going to say, this is the right game plan. I can't just take your word for it and just be like, you know what, he knows more than me. I'll just go with it. No, I kind of need to see him fail. I mean, is that too untrusting? Maybe, but that's just how I feel about it. I can't sit here and endorse running the quarterback between the tackles as like the best thing that you can do until I see him stand there in the pocket and try to survey the field and find receivers and be unable to do it. And if I saw that and I saw that failure, then I think I would maybe be in line with, hey, Kyle's just doing what Kyle needs to do. But since I never really saw that failure, I still kind of am skeptical. I'd like to see him fail, so.
Especially when you see him have success in other capacities in the preseason. Yes, it's against second and third string, but you see the arm, you see the vision, you see his ability to extend plays and hit a guy in the flat or hit a guy 20 yards downfield where a receiver got free from a defensive back. You see this kind of stuff and you're like, okay, let that play out. And if he can't do it, okay, you can't do it. Just assuming that he can't do it and throwing him out there and running him up the middle, these things just don't add up, right? And the fan base is sitting back going, did I miss something? What's going on here? None of this makes sense. None of it adds up. It's not like we've seen a string of cascading failures lead to these decisions. It was just right out the gates. You're a fullback now. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, and we're going to find out more this summer. I mean, I'll say this, from sitting there, 10 feet away from Trey the other day when he spoke and he talked about how he's, seeing a sports psychologist and that football's fun again for him. I mean, it's pretty clear that this is taking a toll on him. This is taking a toll on him. He wants it.
Yeah.
He's prideful. He's determined. He's goal oriented. You know what I mean? He doesn't like the fact that it's gone this way. He wants to rewrite this script. All he wants is the ability to compete. And I can just see that, when he's talking about how football's fun again for him, that he's had some rough days, man. He's had some days where it probably wasn't a whole lot of fun. And, and I'm sure it's been a emotional struggle, and I'm sure it's been a very, very difficult thing to go through for, you're the guy and you're in this spot. I mean, it's like your dream job. You get your dream job and then suddenly you can't kind of make it all work. And then then all of a sudden there's an injury. And now you're not getting an opportunity and your seasons are going by. And, it's a lot. But I mean, to see him say that he's in a better spot mentally and emotionally right now, that was great. I thought the way he threw the ball on the field the other day was the best I've seen. The high speed wild wobble was out of there. I thought his accuracy was right there with Darnold. I thought, they were both really, really very similar as far as the way they threw the ball, as far as timing, touch, and accuracy. So I got reasons to believe that we're going to see a new and improved Trey Lance and that he's going to win this job from Darnold. The question is, if Purdy's healthy and he's the guy and it's clear they're going with him, how does Trey develop without playing? And that's the question that I don't know that there's an answer to. So that one's going to be more complicated. Like, okay, what if Trey looks really good, but Brock comes back and plays really well? Well, now now maybe your phone's going to ring, right? Because now people are going to,
maybe so,
but even so, it's like, then if you see him play well, let's say what we all think is going to happen. I think Trey's going to play well in the preseason, but I also think Brock's going to come back and be healthy. So Brock, I think, is going to be that number one quarterback, but I think Trey's going to win over a lot of people, and there'll be more people that believe in him by the end of the preseason. Okay, well, then what? Then what's your move? Are you shopping him? Are you keeping him? Are you going to pay him that 5th-year option? It's an awful lot of money to pay your backup. Now, you could pay Trey all the money and have Brock be the starter because Brock makes so little that you could make it all work. But are they really going to do that? I don't know. So it's just it's a very, it's almost an unprecedented quarterback battle because I can't think of one that played out this way, on a successful team, where there's still a lot of debate over who's the best option. So It's gonna be really interesting. The one great thing about this is that they have two guys. And I don't know about Sam because I don't know Sam that well, and I'm not that I know these other guys well, but I got a much better sense for Brock and for Trey than I do for Sam at this juncture. I think Brock is going to treat Trey great. I think Trey is going to treat Brock great. I don't see any fracture coming in that relationship. I think it's all positive going both ways. I think Brock will continue to be gracious. I think Trey will continue to be respectful. I mean, that's not going to be an issue, but how does it solve itself? How does Trey get on the field and get better if Brock is a starter in the NFL and stays healthy? So we'll see.
Well, on that point specifically, Trey has been around the team for a while, right? And if he is getting better, what you're hoping to see, I think, as a fan, is I want to make Kyle Shanahan lose sleep at night over this decision. I want to play so well and become almost undeniable. Because that's the one thing that Purdy did do, right? Is that he got his opportunity and he absolutely made the most of it. Lance has gotten his opportunity and he hasn't done all that great. I mean, granted, one of them was in the tsunami here in Chicago. But if Lance is in there and just absolutely kills every opportunity he touches the ball, then force Shanahan to make that decision. Force him to make that decision. And you have nothing to lose. And maybe that's the confidence that you're seeing coming in this year from Lance, as he understands that. I'm going to go kill it every single time. If not, they're not going to pick up my option. I will get an opportunity somewhere else. So he's investing in him. And at the same time, if Lance can't do it, do you want to turn the franchise over to that guy? I don't.
Yeah,
if you can't make it tough, if you can't show that grit and become undeniable, I don't want you as my quarterback.
I would just like to see Trey fulfill his potential. So all the people because there are a lot of people in pro football, from Mike Martz to others, who have just basically said this kid can't do it. I mean, they literally have said, I don't know Mike Martz is like, I don't know what he does well. He doesn't run particularly fast. He doesn't throw with particular accuracy. I've seen stronger arms. I've seen more accurate throwers. I mean, he just kind of eviscerated him in his professional evaluation. I really believe that Trey's skill set is really strong, and that I think it's just, and the thing that makes me the most nervous about Trey is that I really believe that I believe what the Niners saw in him was the makeup, and that they said to themselves, you know what? There are issues with different aspects of his game, but his makeup will carry him through, and he will fulfill his potential based on his makeup as a person. I really believe in that makeup as well. I really do. And so I really feel like if you said to me, is Trey going to make it? I would say, if the question is a this year question, I would say, I don't know. But if the question's a long-term question, I would say he absolutely is going to make it, because I really do believe that, playing football is not rocket science. It can be learned. You can get better. We've seen it. We saw it with a number of quarterbacks. Saw it with Vinny Testaverde. We saw it with Steve Young. Steve Young wasn't good in Tampa. We can't sit here and try to pretend that Steve Young was good in Tampa. He was not good in Tampa. He became a Hall of Famer. Why? Because Steve had the athleticism. He had the requisite arm strength. He had it between the ears. And in football was important to him. It was important to Steve Young to be a good football player. So eventually he got there, but he wasn't good in Tampa. And I feel like the same way about Trey Lance. I really do. I think that he's got everything. He's got the physical. He's got the mental. It's important to him. And so I think just like Steve Young eventually got it, I think Trey's eventually going to get it. My big fear is that it's going to be somewhere else. And that the Niners front office is going to be, looking bad for years and years and years, as Trey goes on to some awesome 8, 9, 10-year career playing great football for a different franchise. So that's why it makes me nervous. The idea of trading him makes me really, really nervous, because I really believe his makeup as a person is going to supersede these weaknesses in his game right now, and he's going to get it. And I don't know if it's going to be this year, but he is going to get it. And then hopefully he's still here, because that's my concern is that they're going to, whether they trade him now or don't pick up the 5th-year option, they're going to be forced to make a final decision on Trey before they know exactly what he is, and that's risky. That is what I fear. I could see him I could see him in Minnesota taking over for Kirk Cousins in 2 years and becoming, a 10-year star for the Vikings, and having Niner fans sitting there going, "What the heck? Why couldn't that happen here?" So that's my fear, and I would rather see them. The only way I would consider moving Trey is if I got a star defensive end and a pick. You know what I mean? I mean, you give me Montez Sweat and a pick, okay, I can justify making the trade, but I can't trade him for a 3rd-round pick and a draft in the future and feel good about that. No, because I could easily see him going to Minnesota or some team like that, Washington, and getting the time, smoothing out the edges, and becoming really damn good. And that would be let's just say this, that will not go unnoticed by 49er fans. And that will make John Lynch's tenure here. That will impact the tenure of Lynch and Shanahan, unless Purdy leads them to, multiple championships. And it's just like, oh, well, but, see, parting ways with Trey and then having him become great somewhere else. It's like if the Niners don't win multiple championships, people are going to lose their mind again, and they're going to blame Shanahan and Lynch.
Yeah, they'll call it the lost years, for sure. Do you think it would be considered a failure on the Niners front office if this time next year we are having this same discussion? Do they pick up the 5th-year option? Purdy was good, but he wasn't great. They went into the playoffs. They lost again.
Yeah, I
do
mean,
you think it's a failure at that point?
Well, it's so tough. That's a tough one. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, that means that Brock didn't seize the job, and Trey was there and somehow also didn't seize the job. Like you're throwing out a scenario where they're both still here, but neither has seized the job.
Right.
And that I really don't want to see that, because that means the Niners still need a franchise quarterback. It means they haven't added the 6th Lombardi. It means that, I mean, I've had people say to me, what if Purdy is, what he showed last year, the elbow injury, never quite gets that same arm strength back, and Trey just doesn't fulfill his potential, and Sam Darnold actually is their best quarterback. And I'm just like, well,
Ugh.
I mean, it's just it's just too much, It's like, I don't know. I don't, how do I feel about? I don't know. I mean, ultimately, if you win, I guess winning cures all. But
it does.
I will say this: there were 14 quarterbacks drafted this year, and don't tell me that if Brock Purdy wasn't this surprise out of nowhere quarterback last year, that many teams would have drafted quarterbacks. Everybody drafted quarterbacks this year because they're like, you know what? We need to take a 7th-round quarterback because maybe Clayton Tune's the guy. Maybe Max Duggan's the guy. Maybe Stetson Bennett's the guy. Maybe Tyson Bagent's the guy. It's like, so everybody went after a quarterback this year, I think largely because of Brock Purdy and in the fact that it's a copycat league, and teams are like, well, wait
100%.
a second. They found a guy. And also, let's be honest about this. If you find a 7th-round quarterback that can play, that's more valuable than drafting a guy 1st overall that can play, because
100%.
you're getting him
win on the books.
Yeah, you win on the books, and you win. And since it's a hard cap, you win because you have a deeper, better roster, because your quarterback was Mr. Irrelevant, as opposed to, drafting a Mr. Irrelevant as the quarterback of the future is like the greatest, maybe one of the greatest draft picks in the history of the draft, because there is no, you're getting the guaranteed years, but you also have the salary at such a low number that you can build a better football team with deeper talent deeper reservoir of talent on either side of the ball.
Absolutely. And we talked about this 3 or 4 months ago. Was this going to change the thinking behind how teams evaluate quarterbacks? And I think we talked about this with the NBA draft. We talked about this, why the Niners do well day 3 and after the draft. It's because how they evaluate talent. Everything in the first 3 drafts is all on potential, right? Well, potential is a huge gamble. But when you just look at the film, you don't get, enamored or wooed by what happens at the combine. You look at the player and you look at their film and you say, well, this guy can actually play, and you go out and you get him, right? So that degree of success, or watching Purdy do it for 4 years, you're getting a mature, very advanced kind of player there. And was that going to impact how NFL teams and organizations evaluated that position? Because it is a win now, right? And if you were to talk to a GM who's on a hot seat, like, yeah, he wants to do the right thing, which means maybe you take that guy number 1. But the guy who's going to put W's up, it might be a guy that you get in the 6th round who's played 4 years at Marshall or something like that, who's seen a ton of these defenses. And sure enough, come the draft, you had a lot of teams in late rounds gambling on quarterbacks, going, well, maybe this guy can do it. And if you look at the profiles of when they took them, they all very, very similarly match that of Purdy. 2, 3, 4-year starter guys who came in from larger conferences, may have seen some of that competition. Maybe they didn't light the world on fire, but you're not going to surprise them in the NFL with schemes or anything else, because those defenses they went against, you're going to see that at the next level. And those are all the people that get plucked out. And it's, this is the Purdy effect, alive and well in the NFL. In one season, it changed.
It's interesting. It's even bigger than football and bigger than sports. I mean, if you're hiring somebody to come work for Mortal Kombat, are you guys, I guess, without even talking to you about it and without even asking, I bet you would probably be more willing to hire some super tech savvy 22-year-old out of a good college than you would hire a 55-year-old guy who worked for a different video game that had more experience. And that's just a guess. But you know what? It's like, and so really the person who's making that call could say, yeah, but we want the upside of the young guy that we can kind of train. We don't want somebody who has their own bad habits, their own expectations, their own whatever. We want the younger person with the higher upside. But I mean, upside, it just means really, let's be honest about things. When we're talking about upside, we're talking about people that haven't done it yet. It's a projection.
Yeah.
You're projecting.
100%.
You're projecting. Do you want to hire me or you want to hire my kid? Well, you can, I'm sure, project my kid to have higher upside, but he has no experience and he's never done it. And you're going to have to show him everything. Where I've worked for this game and that game and this game and that game, and I've got this long resume and I've done it here and I've done it there and I've done it in this market and that market and with this game and I've seen this growth. Yeah, but you know what? Will you adapt to our culture? Will we? And then we may have to pay you a little bit more. And we have to, and so we're in a world now where upside is valued. And, I was talking about this before, we're a society that doesn't respect our elders as much. We respect the upside of our youth more than the experience of our elders. And in a lot of ways, they're the same age, but Brock Purdy kind of represents the experience of the elders, where Lance is the upside of the youth. And so there's people that are saying, hey, go with Lance. The upside is great. But then there's other people going, no. Go with Purdy. Bird in the hand. Go with the bird in the hand. He's doing it right now. You won games. Stop trying to critique victories and just acknowledge how difficult it is to get victories, and go with the guy who got you those victories over the guy who potentially could have greater upside in 2, 3, 4 years. In a lot of ways, these are decisions that corporate America is making daily, right?
100%. And you see it all the time. Thankfully at NetherRealm, we operate much more like baseball, where we have, we find young talent and we slowly bring them up through the ranks. And when they prove it, we start giving them, bigger and bigger things, and they move up. And our studio, shockingly, this might not mean much, but I think the average tenure of studios out there might be anywhere 2.5, 3 years, I think, on average throughout the industry. I could off. That's the last time I saw the data. Our studio is north of 12 years that are average tenure. So we got a lot of senior people.
That's great. That's great continuity, and I'm sure there's a benefit to it too.
Oh, huge. It establishes the culture. We understand how we're going to work. We get to train the next people coming in to make the next Mortal Kombat. Yeah, it's brilliant. And it's also, you can't surprise somebody who's done it that long. You're like, hey, we had this new problem. Yeah, I saw that before back in '94. It's fine. We'll just do this. And immediately you have solves to that stuff. But yeah, it absolutely, a lot of other tech companies are going younger. They're skewing younger. They're always looking for that next big thing, or fresh eyes, as they call it. Fresh eyes. We want fresh looks at this problem to see if we can't. Really means is come in and give us ideas we haven't thought of yet, so that we can monetize this thing in a new way. You see that in some other tech companies, but you're right. That thinking and that outlook on business has infiltrated everywhere. And sports is absolutely no different. I mean, that's what the drafts are all about, right? I'm betting on you to be the next big thing. And another YouTuber out there put up an interesting video not too long ago. I think it was Jim High Roller looking at first round picks, and he threw out a stat like out of like the 200, top 7 picks or something like that over the last 25 years, only 6 of them have been on the team that drafted them and won a championship. It was some insane number like that.
So we talking about quarterbacks or
no, basketball players? Basketball players. Yeah, it's basketball. And it's kind of, I guess it's kind of true in a way of a lot of life, really. You're gonna have to. It's gonna take time to figure it out, right? And once you do, then you're like, oh, I got it now. It clicked for me. I understand it. Then you go start doing your best work.
Well, I think it also that thing in basketball, I think, is tied to, it's very rare that even in basketball that one player can turn the fortunes of the entire franchise. So what you really need are consistent good decisions, and the teams that are picking at the top of the draft are kind of there because they either, it could be a Spurs situation where it's just happened to be their time to be in that first spot, or they more times than not, it's probably poorly run teams that don't make good decisions. So now you're asking poorly, like the Warriors, for example, were forever poorly run team, and they only got to be a championship team when they made a series of good decisions in a row. They drafted Steph Curry. They drafted Klay Thompson. They drafted Draymond Green. They drafted Harrison Barnes. They built through the draft. They made good decisions along the way, and a series of them, and that turned things around. But yeah, it's like more times than not, the teams at the top of the draft are the worst franchises, oftentimes run by nomadic. A group of nomadic executives and coaches that move around all the time. There's all kinds of turnover. The Arizona Cardinals are a perfect example in the NFL, right? They draft a good player, they draft a bad player. They draft a good player, they draft a bad player. And they never put together a series of 5, 6, 7, 8 moves in a row, which is what it takes to build that championship team. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. It's like not only these NBA teams have to pick the right player when they pick up high, but then they also have to make the right series of decisions after that pick is made to build that thing from a lottery team into a playoff team, into a title contender, into a champion. And there's, different steps of the ladder that you got to climb. So yeah, I'll tell you, it's really interesting. That's why it seems like when, it seems like sports is very much cyclical in that, you're only going to be up for so long, then you're going to be down. But then you also see teams that just don't ever put together enough consistency to ever really contend. Which team are you? You know what I mean? Over time. But yeah,
you want to be the contender, that's for sure.
Yeah, you want to be a contender. And more than anything too, it's like, it's also become situational. Like, player X can succeed in my situation, but will fail in yours. Some teams you need leadership. I mean, and other teams, a culture. I thought the 49ers made a real nice pick adding Darrell Luter and Jair Brown to their secondary. Why? Because they lost Emmanuel Mosley and Jimmy Ward, those guys weren't just good football players. They were culture players. They were tone setters. They were leaders. And so you didn't just need a corner or a free safety or a nickel. You need tone setter leader types. And I think they got in Luter, and we'll find out how these guys play, but at least personality wise, they got leader types from Brown and from Luter. And so now you're turning your culture over. So, you know, the personality traits of these players matter too over time, you know, because eventually the makeup of your room, you draft enough guys who are smart and tough. Guess what happens after 3-4 drafts? You got a room full of guys who are all smart and all tough. You know, if you're constantly looking at the draft going, you know what? Yeah, he's a character risk, but he's got a lot of talent, like the Eagles did this year with Jalen Carter. He's got enormous talent, but he's a character risk. Okay, you made that call this year. You're putting him into a room that has Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox. We'll see if it works for you. But if every year you go with character concerns, guess what happens after 3-4 years? You got a bunch of guys in your locker room with poor character. And, you know, so then that starts to become a thing. So, you know, ultimately, I think that character matters, and, you know, you need as many leaders as possible. And then back to what the Niners have done on day 3, they're drafting developed, productive football players who may not have measurables, and they're figuring out which of these guys can make it. Well, at the end of the day, you got a bunch of productive football players, you know. That's not a bad place to start.
No way. No way. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time here, Larry. I know that you've been marathoning this one, and
we're 3 hours in on this one.
Yeah,
hey man,
absolutely.
Have a great weekend, and I'm thinking about doing more you know, video, like, you know, video caller type segments in the weeks ahead. So anytime we you know, we go Krug phone, feel free to jump in here and chop it up. I always love your insights and your kind of, you know, cerebral way of looking at the sports world. It's always appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And come time when we release, I'll see if I can't grab a couple of copies of the game, get them signed by a bunch of the team, and then maybe we raffle them off to your members.
That would be so cool. There'd be, I would love that. That would be phenomenal. And I'm sure the you know, the Krug channel audience would love their inside connection to Mortal Kombat. Drew, have a great Friday, man. We'll let you go.
Yeah, you too, man. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. The great Digital Drew checking in from Chicago. And you say, who's Digital Drew? Digital Drew is just a you know, a YouTube you know, watcher of us, and we've had him on before in where he's called in, and we in just kind of going back and forth, and me asking him, what is that over your shoulder? He's like, that's Mortal Kombat. And then we start getting into it. He actually is one of the people that works on Mortal Kombat, which is produced there in the Chicagoland area, and he's a fan of the show, and he's always good to talk to, and I love getting his thoughts. All right, let's hit a couple chats, and then we'll bolt for the door here. Terradome in the house says, shout out to Combat Medics at Digital Drew. There you go, a little word there from Terradome. Fish and chips. Larry, do you finish and then chop sports with the wife? You know what? The one thing about me and my wife, we talk about a lot of things. We never talk sports. And that's probably why we've been married for 20 years, because I don't walk in there and say, honey, Lance, Purdy, what do you think? She doesn't. She doesn't care. Chris Bean says, thank you, Larry. Thank you, Drew. Great content. The car gods. We breathe, eat, and smoke sports. What about smoke? Fish and chips. Larry loves to chop. I do, man. That's why I would do this if I wasn't getting paid. We suck again, says he doesn't drink water and no bathroom breaks. There we go. I got water. I got multiple bottles of water here. Some nights I get more thirsty than others. We suck said, go get some water. He says, almost 3 hour show. No, 3 hours and 8 minutes. All right. Oh man. Parcells would have never signed off on Trey Lance. Dusty. Larry, hey, yeah, Larry, where's your Pong game? Do you guys ever watch Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell? They're in the locker room playing Pong, and you can hear it go boop, boop, boop. Could you imagine if kids were forced to play Pong today? What their reaction would be? They'd be like, "What the heck is this? You guys actually played this for fun? Are you kidding me? Pong? Boop 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 boop." Just for hours. All right. That does it. Wavewire says, my girlfriend hates sports, but we get along great. Cheers. Yeah, everybody said to me when we were getting married, like in the lead up to the marriage, you have the the rehearsal dinner and the engagement party, and I kept getting this question. So, Larry, you're really into sports. I'm like, yeah. So I'm sure your wife Amy's probably really into sports. And I'm like, no. Like, no. And then when I would tell people no, they would usually give me a concerned look. Like, no. Like they feared for the relationship, long-term health, because she didn't like sports. But no, it's worked out good. I don't want to, it's like anything else. It's like, do you think a doctor comes home and wants to talk about spleens? No. Do you think football players go home and want to talk about cut up film? Probably not. So sometimes it's good just to leave work at work. Dusty Gold says, no bathroom breaks. Damn bladder, Larry. Car Gods. Atari was the shit. Laugh says, so what do you guys talk about? We talk about our kids. Talk about life. Talk about her stories. We talk about, I don't know, talk about a bunch of stuff. We talk about everything else you would talk about. What's for dinner? Who's got to be where? Who I've got to pick up? Who I've got to drive? What's wrong with our vehicles? When do we need to have them serviced? Did you get the smog check? I thought you were going to get the smog check. Really? I thought you were getting the smog, those kinds of things. Nothing really profound. Michael Monahan says, Coleco football, baby. I used to love Coleco. I even have a couple of them here. Those, the Madden, or not the Madden, the Mattel Electronics handhelds, the basketball one. I had the basketball one. I had the baseball one. I had the football one and the football two where you could pass. You're just sitting there getting carpal tunnel. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Oh, I got a lane. I'm going. Then you could put it on like Pro 1 or Pro 2. And Pro 1 was kind of easy, but Pro 2 is just really hard. Love that game. Love those games. As kids, you go to a sleepover. Back in the day, you'd have your sleeping bag. You'd be like, all right, everybody go to bed. Turn it on mute and just sit there and play that game till your thumbs got tired. Love those games. Digital Drew says carpal tunnel. Bad words in my world. LOL. Terradome says Mr. Touchdown. Car God says sports isn't work. It's a religion. Okay. Well, we don't talk religion in my house. It actually works out good. I'll say this, I used to think, oh man, I really want a wife that could talk sports. But then like I've played in some fantasy leagues and like guys have their wives at the draft. And I'm just like, every time they talk, I'm just like, ooh. So I don't know, man. I maybe I'm George Costanza in that way. Separate universes. I don't need my wife saying, I've got 3 tight ends and I can only play 2. Who do I go with? I mean, that some people are like, yeah, that's awesome. That's a dream. To me, that's a nightmare. That's like waking up in the middle of the night and you're sweating and you're, oh my God, I thought my wife was super into fantasy football there for a second. Oh, thank God that was just a dream. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to all of you guys for being proud supporters of the Krueger Show. I don't know if I'm going post-game tonight. In fact, Vicky Pellich sent me a note saying, Krueger, you done doing post-game on the Giants? No, I just kind of took a break because we had Warriors in the draft. and maybe I'll go tonight. Maybe I'll go tonight with Danny. I'll send him a note and see if he wants to hook up, maybe go post game Giants tonight. So we'll look forward to it. I'm definitely going to do a lot more Giants. The Giants have just been a freaking bore, to be honest. And I like to, I'm running this channel to make money as well. And so it's like, there's so many more people that want to digest like Warrior playoffs and like Niner content than Giant stuff, that I've gotten away from the Giants. But anybody who knows me knows, man, I love the Giants, and I'm super passionate about baseball and about the Giants. So I'm just kind of waiting for them to entertain me. Once they start to entertain me and it starts to get kind of juicy, I'll get back in there. But maybe tonight. We'll see. We'll see if my wife wants to go to a movie, go out to dinner. Done a lot of streaming this week. I'm not sure if I'll have enough time. I'm not sure if we'll have enough time. I've got to go to what was the Will Ferrell? Home Depot. Yeah, I got a busy Saturday at Home Depot. Not sure if we'll have enough time. All right, have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer the